Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Heavy Metallurgy, 129 as a matter of fact. Well, we're here and our guest Matt is having some technical issues. He's trying to get back on actually, so we'll see if it works out or not, but he may not be here. We'll see. But anyway, welcome. Alan, how are you?
Doing pretty good. It's been a very busy couple of days. Nothing bad, just busy with all the usual stuff. But yeah, very happy to be able to sit down and quit moving around for a while and just have some fun talking metal with you and with everybody in the chat tonight. Hope everybody out there is doing well and is looking forward to this as much as I am.
Yeah, should be a fun one. Something a little different. This has been on our list of potential show topics for a long time.
Yep.
And we picked it out kind of last minute, something fast and easy, and these are usually the most fun ones. But yeah, you know what? It's funny. We're going to get into this topic here in a minute, but I think albums that you initially hate but stick with and end up liking, it's kind of a testament to a good album. Just one of those deals that if an album blows you away initially, I mean, maybe that album doesn't pack much of a punch or for long-term enjoyment. It's hard to say. It's one of those interesting topics that what makes it tick. But what do you think?
Yeah, and when looking at albums to show for this one, it occurs to me there are lots of things that can make an album not click on first impression. One good example would be sometimes your expectations are just all wrong going into an album, especially if it's a band you're not very familiar with, and you've kind of got it in your mind that, oh, I think this is, like a death metal band, but then they maybe turn out being like a very technical death metal band or a very, melodic death metal band. You've kind of got your brain set on the wrong wavelength. So you hear it for the first time, you're like, oh, well, that's not what I was expecting. And that can be disappointing and give you a negative impression of the album. Then, give it some time once your brain kind of resets itself and you realize, okay, I'm supposed to be hearing a melodic death metal album here, not a Cannibal Corpse style thing. Then you all of a sudden it may click with you a lot faster.
Mood plays a big part of it too.
Yes, that's another good one. Yeah, what mood are you in? Sometimes you're just not in the mood for certain styles, and you hear a thrash record and you're just not in a thrash mood that day, and it will hit you completely wrong. And you blame the album, and you don't always realize that. Oh, wait, today really wasn't the day to listen to that kind of record. I haven't been in the mood for that style lately. Why did I even play that? Often it's because, well, you had a chance to hear it. And it's like, okay, I'll give it a chance, but yeah, it's not really what your ears are tuned to right then. That's a big problem.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too because I, going through my collection picking for this, some of it. My buddy Scott, when I was younger, I hated everything. He plays stuff for me. You got to check this out. I hated everything. First chance, first listen, it was always, this sucks. What is up with those vocals? This is garbage. But you take a record home or he tapes it for me, and and then I'm coming back saying, okay, it's great. Of course, he gave me shit about it all the time, but I've gotten better with that over the years. But it's the first impression. People say it's usually correct. I don't know if that's true when it comes to music, and I know that's when, my hope when I'm picking black metal stuff on Wednesdays for TJ to enjoy for the week, I'm hoping to, this is going to be the one that cracks his hatred for this stuff. And I like Avantasia. Mel, I dig it. I have two of their albums and I dig them both. Good stuff. I do sometimes. And again, it all depends on my mood. Like today was punk day. I've been listening to punk all day. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun watching some, live shows online and stuff like that. It's nice to have everybody that puts their eggs in the brutal death metal basket. They're going to get burnt out, man, or the black metal basket. It doesn't bode well for longevity in any sort of, you got to have different varying levels of extremity or not extremity at all mixed into your collection to keep it fresh.
Yep. I know another thing that will sometimes get me off on the wrong foot with an album is that if I've gotten it hyped up too much in my head, there's some new release that you've really been looking forward to, and you're just thinking, this is going to be so fantastic. Or it may not be a new release, but it's one of these, mythic albums you've heard about for ages, and you've just now are getting a chance to pick up a copy or something. You're like, everybody says this is, just, the pinnacle of black metal. And then you hear it for the first time and it doesn't really live up to that hype you've built up in your head. It's just like, you kind of go from being like, oh, I thought this would be the best thing ever, to like, oh, fuck, that's not that good. And so again, it's like, yeah, what's the big deal? I don't get it. Once you kind of, reset to more realistic expectations, you may realize, hey, that actually is a very, very good album. It's not one of my 10 favorite albums of all time, like I was expecting it to be from all the hype surrounding it.
Right on. Someone said, Melanie, I'm a Blondie fan, so I can't judge. You know what? Blondie rules. I don't care what anybody says. Clem, amazing drummer. Great. Good stuff. Great voice.
Looks like lots of folks too are mentioning they've been picking up some cool stuff lately. There's definitely a lot of good stuff coming out in October. A lot of good new releases lately. So yeah, cool to see that some folks are picking up some titles that they are interested in, and hopefully you'll enjoy them and they won't make a bad first impression when you get to spin them.
Right. Well, do you want to jump in first? We'll just get this started.
Sure, I will do that. Let's see. I think I've only got one I've got to show off the phone that I don't have a physical copy of right now. So we will start with some black metal. This album did not make a good first impression with me. And I know why it didn't. I know a lot of folks right now thinking, wait, what? That's a great album. And I agree, it is. But I didn't think that the first time I heard it. And the problem with this was my introduction to Samael was the album after this. And, there's some similarities in style, but that album, has, a lot of, these kind of big keyboard synth moments in it. It's got kind of a brighter production to it. And, I love Ceremony of Opposites. That album instantly clicked with me the first time I started hearing a few promo tracks from it on college radio. So great album. Then was looking for others by them. It's like, oh yeah, I should go back and check out the earlier ones. So, I got, Blood Ritual, and Blood Ritual, of course, doesn't have that same kind of sound or production to it that you have on Ceremony of Opposites. So like the first time I heard this, I'm just like, that's really just kind of plain. Whatever. I'll go back and play Ceremony of Opposites instead. I didn't get rid of it right away. I went back to it eventually and realized, oh, okay, no, this is very good. It's just a different style. They hadn't added this other component to their sound quite so much yet. But for this style, that's very, very good. So I ended up liking it quite a bit. But yeah, I went into it expecting it to sound a lot more like Ceremony. I had never heard anything off the previous two albums, so I had no idea that they started off, in a little more direct style of black metal, and then got, the keyboards. And, I'd followed everything after Ceremony. I knew that you went into Rain and you start Passage and you got the drum machines and all that kind of stuff and went in a different direction. But I wasn't expecting it to be this different on the early albums either. So yeah, Samael's Blood Ritual is one that it caught me off guard because I was expecting one thing and got something else, and it kind of blinded me to how good the album actually was for a little while.
All right, good pick, good first pick. We might revisit that band a little bit later, but going through my list, some of these might be a bit surprising for a lot of people. It feels kind of shocking to show some of these and say that I initially hated this.
Oh, interesting.
So again, just, I was a Kiss guy, a Dio, Sabbath, heavy metal guy, Ozzy Osbourne. And when this stuff started coming up, there was a local radio station, WNMC. Keith was the guy's name. He curated the metal show, and he was playing this stuff. This is the first Metallica I ever heard. My buddy Scott, I think, taped it off the radio or bought the tape. I don't remember. And, Fight Fire with Fire, I just laughed. I'm like, what is up with these vocals? And rah, 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 rah. Stupid. This is dumb. And I'm going to there's going to be a lot of like, what the hell are you thinking? Yep. Initially, my first impression of this was so extreme. I laughed when I heard it for the first time. And it was one of those deals where I kept, Scott kept spinning it and I kept checking it out, and, Trapped Under Ice, Fight Fire with Fire. They're the extreme end of this album. For Whom the Bell Tolls, it's got a little bit more of a mid-pace swagger to it and darker. Ride the Lightning, of course, very colorful, nice song. Creeping Death. It clicked. I had to go back with hat in hand saying, could you dub this for me? And, so yeah, it's just one of those deals where sometimes you just may not be ready for what you're about to hear. And like I said, coming out of the Kiss era, the heavy metal era, Metallica, there's no denying that they were a kick in the pants to heavy metal. And very pivotal band in my life for sure. But yeah, it feels weird. A lot of these you're all going to be like, what? You hated that record? But that was my first what the hell were you thinking moment.
Yep. No, that's a good point.
Oh,
Marty.
Wade, you're lying. Anyway, what were you gonna say?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that's a good point. With something, bands like Metallica, when they were first showing up on the scene, especially in America, that was a big leap forward in terms of how heavy things were. Like when we did the show a couple of weeks ago with Aaron and Dwayne doing like the 1982 year review. A lot of the albums we showed were, Germany, the UK. There were a few US metal albums we showed from that year that were pretty good, but not a lot, and certainly nothing that would be considered heavy by later standards. And so, yeah, if somebody was listening to stuff like Kiss and Whitesnake and stuff like that in 1982, and then fast forward 18 months or so, and they're hearing Ride the Lightning, there's a huge gap there. In terms of, how extreme that would have sounded. I can see that catching people off guard back then. We kind of, in the US, we didn't really have much of a new wave of British heavy metal of our own. We kind of went more from, Riot and the Rods straight into thrash metal almost.
Yep.
There were bands doing traditional stuff that were good, but it's kind of a short time window, and not a lot of those bands got a ton of exposure. So it was a pretty rapid transition into the more extreme stuff. So I can very much see why that would have thrown you for a loop.
Mm-hmm. It was a shock to the system for sure.
Yep. Yeah, I will describe some similar shocks as we move through things this evening.
Yep. All right.
Before we get anything like that, we'll do a classic old vinyl one. This was a band I had heard about for a long time, one of those long lost underground bands like Manila Road that, only the select few have ever gotten to hear their music. And so it took me forever to track one down. So, I was really, really excited to see what it sounded like. And I played it and I was just like, oh my dear God, what have I done? This is horrible. I am talking about Brocas Helm, Black Death.
That's a good album. I like that. I downloaded it back in the Soulseek days, but it's good.
Oh, it is great. I love it now. The first one or two times I played it, though, I'm just like, I'm not sure these guys know what the fuck they're playing. For those who haven't heard the album, it tends to go pretty fast. It's pretty fast paced. It's not speed metal, but they're playing a lot of the songs at a really quick gallop. It's got a pretty low budget production. And so, you got, these very fast noodly guitar solos and these very kind of tinny sounding drums, just kind of clackety, clackety, clacketing in the background. And it kind of gives the impression, and, the vocalist has like a very, strange kind of unique voice. It's a little bit high and shrill. And it just kind of makes the whole thing feel like it's falling apart as fast as they're trying to put it together. You really do almost get the impression of like, just, a bunch of guys strung out on speed, just going, and the guy over here is playing as fast as he can, and this guy's hitting the drum as fast as he can, and it's just not gelling together as a song at all. So, I was just like, dear God, what are they doing? What is this noise I am listening to? So I had to set it aside, for a while. I was like, we'll come back to that another time. Yeah, and I did. I sat down and gave it more spins, and it finally started clicks. Like, okay, I realized part of the issue here, it's actually just production. If I'm listening beyond that, the songs are now starting to kind of, shine through to me. now that I'm following it really closely and I know what to expect, now I see how the guitar is just kind of weaving through all this stuff. And yeah, it's a great album. It really is one of those kind of underground classics. And yeah, it doesn't sound like Manila Road, but it fits in that kind of the quirky metal of the US scene with the Kirith Ungles and the Manila Roads and stuff like that. So yeah, fine album, like it a lot. But yeah, my first impression was literally very head scratching. I was just like, what is everybody seeing this? It just feels like these guys are playing very fast and aren't in time with each other at all. And they sounded like they were all over the board to me. So it took a few extra listens and just realizing that, yeah, there's some quirks to it, but it's actually really, really good stuff. They've never made much material, sadly. Brocas Helm, I think, has a total of only 3 albums, unless I missed something along the way. And then there's a single here and a single there, a live album, but not a lot of material, which is a real shame because they were a pretty inventive band. Once you get used to their style, it's pretty cool stuff. They're a band that are often cited as probably having a big influence on Lord Weird's Slothfeg when they got up and running. So if folks are not familiar with Brocas Helm, but you need a better reference point, if you like Slothfeg, this would probably be a good band to go back and check out as well. So, yep.
Ryan has a good point here. Right? This episode we could get more mileage out of this episode for doing albums that we loved initially, but now hate type of thing. So
I was thinking that before we started, Ryan, like someday I'm sure we will reverse this topic and do it the other way around in terms of, albums that, we kind of, they wore out their welcome for some reason.
Yep.
You're exactly right. That will be a good show, right? Ryan, maybe you should come on and do that with us.
That would be the one, Ryan. We could get you on for that. So
you've called your shot.
Yep.
All right, Marty. Let's go back to you.
Man, I'm embarrassed to even show this, but here's another one I hated initially.
I am embarrassed for you.
I know. It's embarrassing because it's
to the viewers. I sincerely apologize for what is happening this evening. Now, speaking on Matt's behalf, technical issues are beyond any of our control. Stuff happens. Sometimes you plug a device in and it just doesn't work correctly. Your computer's updated. Things aren't compatible. But what we have just witnessed is pretty much unforgivable, and I think we can all agree on that. So now that I've given Marty a few minutes to think things over and review his choices, I guess we'll hear him out on this.
Can't fix stupid. That's all I can say. You just got to learn to live with it and try to be better moving forward. But again, this was right around the same time as Ride the Lightning. It's the same radio show. Keith, hey, this is Keith. This is The Oath by Mercyful Fate. And not only, I mean, for a lot of people, the vocals are tough to get around. They were really tough for me to get around. And also, again, Satanic Panic era, this album scared me a little bit. It was like The Oath, that little sermon he has at the beginning of it, pretty creepy, and it kind of played into all that stuff. But again, once the light switch went up, and this picture here always freaked me out too. He's coming out of look like a something from The Exorcist or something. I don't know, very 80s horror tinged, but it felt real. It made Satan feel real. But this album clicked, and once the light switch went on, I just couldn't get enough. I picked up Melissa, and of course, I followed this band all the way through, and of course, King Diamond too. Buying every single album, good or bad. But initially, I hated this record, but it ended up being one of my all-time favorites. And there's going to be a lot of people in here saying King Diamond. I've seen it already. People are saying the vocals are tough.
They can be for some folks, and that is fair. Anybody who tells me they're not into Mercyful Fate or King Diamond because of the vocals, okay, I get that. Can't argue that. They don't bother me, but I can see what, yes, they are hard sell for many folks.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'll also pick one that, was maybe a little over the top for me the first time I heard it, and definitely had the whole satanic angle and people in an uproar over that too. I was not sold on Venom's Welcome to Hell the first time I heard it. And
that's not their best record. It just isn't.
It's not their best record. I like it. I don't have any problems with the album. But yeah, the first time I heard it, it was one of those things where, yeah, and my brain kind of understood the problem right away. I'm like, you know what, young Alan, you're just not ready for this something this quite over the top, ridiculous, crazy. I'm like, good point, young Alan. Let's put that away and try it again, maybe in a couple of months. And so I did. And so I did. Yeah, and it did click later on. But yeah, the first time I was hearing it, it's just like, this is really, really over the top. It didn't like scare me. It, of course, had all the satanic blurbs on the back cover and all that stuff. I wasn't a fan of that. That wasn't, to me, that stuff was never cool. That was never like, oh yeah, I'm going to, freak out the squares with this kind of thing. It's like, okay, it's there. Doesn't really do much for me, but it was just, musically, it was, I hadn't heard anything similar to it before. And brain just was like, I don't quite know what to do with this. It's not, I'd heard plenty of thrash. Like, it's not thrash. It's got some thrashy elements. I didn't really know enough about punk to realize that, there's a strong punk vibe, in the background, or, a very strong Motorhead influence. Those things were still too new to me to kind of put the pieces together and see what was happening. So I went back on the shelf for a while. I heard other Venom track. The way I got back into it was we started hearing Venom track here and a Venom track there on different compilations, and be like, oh, okay, now I like this song. Like, that's a good one. Oh, it was on that album too. Different version, but okay, that works. And so I kind of worked my way more slowly into Venom song by song. And then it's like, okay, now I can appreciate this album and enjoy it just fine. But the first couple of times, it was something I just was not ready to process at that point. When most of your cassette collection is somewhere between Danger Danger and Master of Puppets, this kind of just didn't fit in quite yet. Needed a little more time to work up to that one.
Right on.
But and you're right. It's the album definitely has its flaws. It's not a perfect recording. I still enjoy it a lot, though. I don't play it as much as black metal, but it still gets.
It's still good. Angel Dust is on there. I mean, great songs.
Angel Dust is the song. Is that first song that kind of started to get my toe back in the door.
Yeah,
where it's just like, that one's actually really good. That one's a catchy tune. I can get into this one. Let's see which other ones I can get into as well. And turned out I could get into most of them.
Yep.
That was another thing with Venom too that I realized over time. A lot of their really good songs were on like singles and EPs too. They had so much material that wasn't on the first couple of albums. That's really, really good stuff. You gotta pick up the anthologies like the 7 Gates of Hell collection to get all those kind of things now.
All right. Okay, this one isn't too big of a shock because I think this transition for this band probably threw a lot of people for a loop, but let's talk about A Blaze in the Northern Sky by Darkthrone.
Oh yeah.
I still think Soulside Journey is Darkthrone's best album. I just do. It's an amazing death metal record. It's evil. It's got a little bit of an Autopsy vibe here and there. The lyrics are cool. It's Sweden kind of dominated the death metal sound, but these Norwegians come along and they had kind of a different vibe to it. And like the Finns, their vibe to death metal is dark and twisted. It's all three countries, even though they're neighbors, very different from each other. And when this tape came in to Camelot Music, I went running in there and saw them and went, holy crap, new Darkthrone killer. I've got this. I'm going for it. I got in the truck, put it in the tape deck. I'm like, what the hell is this crap I'm listening to? What is this? And then I'm like in disbelief. Then there's denial. Maybe it's just a demo. Maybe it's just, look at it. It's black and white. It's got the guy.
Maybe my tape deck's fucked up and
maybe my tape decks, maybe the tape's broke and I got home listened to it on my home deck. And I'm just like, what the hell? I shelved it in my tape deck and my tape rack and like, well, that sucks. Didn't quite understand what was happening, but 6 months later, I mean, back in those days, money was tight. We've said it on here before. When you're younger, you don't have limitless funds to burn. You maybe make, what year did this come out? 91. Yep. 91. I'm 2 years out of high school. I'm working at my first real job. paying bills, and I didn't have a ton of expendable cash. So I ended up circling back around to this tape, putting it in, and it clicked with me. I'm like, okay, Bathory, Celtic Frost, I get it. And then I end up starting to kind of like it. And then after a while, I end up loving it. This is one of my favorite of the black metal of the unholy trinity, essentially. But man, what a culture shock when this thing hit right straight out of the tape case into my tape player. Oof, instant disappointment, regret, and paying for it, and all the other things. So, yeah, Darkthrone, Blaze in the Northern Sky.
That makes sense. Now, did you just kind of circle back to that album and eventually like it, or were you starting to hear like some other black metal releases around then that kind of helped you realize, oh, this is what's going on, and then you revisit?
Well, I was listening to some Bathory stuff and here and there, and liking it a little bit. And of course, I like Celtic Frost, and there's no denying the Celtic Frost stamp of approval all over that material. Yeah. So again, about 4 to 6 months later, I bought it. I need to listen to this again. And maybe I got a little bit more knowledge behind me in that 4 to 6 months, and it helped me listen to it with different ears. So then it was just getting to know it, and ended up liking the sound, and then I got it. I'm like, okay, this makes sense. I see what they're going for. They're being evil instead of brutal, brutal and atmospheric to just evil and atmospheric. Yep. Absolutely. All right, Alan.
All right. Well, yeah, that brings to mind one I hadn't thought of, but it does kind of fit the bill here. So I shall pull it up. Have to go back to the phone for this one. I had the same kind of issue with black metal at first, but for me it wasn't the Darkthrone album. It was this one. The first time
at least that had production value.
Yeah, it was still just in terms of the music coming out of the machine. It was just like, what the hell is this? And it wasn't even that I didn't like it. It was that I don't know what they're doing here. This was, I'd heard maybe just a little black metal here and there at that point. Again, black metal was very slow to work its way into my little corner of the Midwest where I was living in the mid-90s. So I'm sure in other places this stuff was already Euronymous was already a year or two dead before I heard Mayhem. But my girlfriend at the time had bought a cassette tape of this. She got it really cheap. I don't think it even had a case. I think it was just like a loose cassette tape. So we didn't even have like a cover or anything. So no information about the band, no idea what it's supposed to look like. Just this weird kind of webby. Upside down cross logo was on the tape. And so we're like, okay, yeah, let's see. It was like $1. Let's see what it sounds like. And both of us were just like, huh? Could not figure it out at all. So I doubt she ever played it again. And I certainly didn't ask her to dig it back out anytime soon. So yeah, it wasn't until, in my case, it was, hearing some other black metal bands and then starting to realize, oh, that's what that weird tape was. I heard in the Night Side Eclipse, like, now this is kind of cool. Now I'm starting to get the hang of this. Heard some of the early Burzum stuff, some Immortal, the early ancient material before they became cosplay vampires for a little while. Yeah, and then De Mysterious started to make sense. But yeah, that first time I heard it, just had no frame of reference for anything like that. It didn't even really make the Celtic Frost or Hellhammer kind of connections. It was just so weird sounding to us. So that was another one. It's like, nope, not ready for this. Don't know what it is. And with no J card or anything, there was nothing really to follow up on. Yeah, this is pre-internet too, folks. I mean, it's not like we could type it in and start to find out anything. It's just like, whatever. Next, we'd bought a pile of really cheap crap that day, so you set it aside and we moved on to something else.
And I gotta say, the one thing that was a connecting factor for me on that record was the vocals. People either love it or hate it. It reminded me of Ogre from Skinny Puppy, and I listened to Skinny Puppy back then. So I heard it and I'm like, wow, this guy sounds a lot like Ogre from Skinny Puppy. And then at that point I had heard some other black metal. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of different from the rest of this, cancer throat screaming type stuff. It's it connected with me pretty quick. And of course, the fullness of the production and, you know, the booming toms and stuff is just really very cool.
Yep. Yeah. And John has a really good point here that, yeah, back then you very rarely had a chance to preview stuff before you bought it. Unless a friend happened to have it, or you had a college radio station close enough nearby, or you were in a bigger city that had, you know, maybe a weekend metal show. A lot of times, yeah, you were going on, you know, cover art and band photos and maybe something you read in a magazine. So you could end up being like, this isn't what I expected at all. Don't know what's happening here. You got thrown for a loop. Nowadays, it's almost hard to get thrown for a loop. It's so easy to even just incidentally find out stuff about a band or, you know, what they're going to sound like. That it is. You almost have to work in order to surprise yourself now.
Sorry.
All good.
Sorry, everybody.
But
being funny in the chat. There we go. All right. We're going to stick with the same band here. I just want to get these out of the way because after I had finally come around and enjoyed the sound, I picked up an OG press of this in Grand Rapids on CD. And this is not an OG press. I think this is a second or third pressing. Anyway, it came out in 2002. Transylvanian Hunger. I paid $25 for this import CD and put it on, and it was basically because I got this before I ended up getting Under a Funeral Moon. So basically, it had the sound of A Blaze in the Northern Sky, but colder. And the fact that this is a 2-riff maximum type of album, every song has got maybe 2 riffs on it. It seemed like a step backwards into laziness. It seemed lazy. They're trying to lean into the vibe, the spirit of it, lazy. And of course, what song is it? 1, 2, 3. Slotet I det Frigurna. It's Skald of Satanist Soul. This is the dun 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 dun, then the little drum roll, and it kicks right into it. That song is so catchy, it sold me, and then I end up liking the whole album. It took me a minute, but I ended up appreciating the simplicity. And again, I felt like I understood the context of what they were trying to achieve with this record, which was bare minimum coldness, repetition, and of course, Culto's vocals sell it every time. I loved his black metal vocals. They were just super grim. He was always a favorite. And then he changed it to sound like a drunk guy yelling at a bar. And I did not appreciate his change when they went crusty punk, weirdo rock guys. But, all right. Constipated vampire. Yes.
Melanie's in a funny mood tonight. Just good to see.
Just don't be a canoe, Mel. Just don't be a canoe. Bra bra. Anyway, Alan.
Enough said. All right. An old one here. Let's go old school. Deep Purple's Burn didn't make a great impression the first time I heard it, which was a long
Coverdale,
time
right? Coverdale's on that one.
It's his first one. Yes.
Yep.
Him and Glenn Hughes on board for the first time.
I like that one.
Yep. I like it now too. It's actually quite good. The thing that threw me the first time I heard it is that it starts off, with a fantastic, title track. Burn is, a Deep Purple classic in my book. The rest of the album, though, they definitely are leaning into, the blues rock direction very heavily. And they're good at it. The songs are, most of them are quite good. There's a lot of good ones. Mistreated, very small font. Sail Away is really good. It's got that really funky line to it. Yeah. So it's a very solid album, but you have this really kind of almost high octane rocker that opens the album and you're like, yeah, this is gonna be awesome. The new lineup's great. And then the rest of the album really just is kind of different. They really settle into more the bluesy rock direction. And so it's just like, wait a minute. Wait, is there gonna be another song like Burn on here or not? No, there's not. So that was kind of a put off for a while. It's just like, cool cover, cool title track. I don't know about the rest of this. Again, I was a little bit more used to, the Mark II lineup that had come before, and those albums, which obviously, had blues components to them, but not to the degree this does. There is a stylistic shift on this one. I can listen to this now and it's like, yeah, that is an excellent example of 70s, bluesy, hard rock material. Sounds great. Very good album. But at first, it really, the title track I felt, kind of misled me a little bit. So I'm like getting into it expecting one thing, and then it kind of goes in another direction. And it just wasn't quite the Deep Purple sound I was used to. They were definitely changing styles here a bit. And, it's, I guess some people, might mark it as, one of their last, really top albums. People seem really split on Stormbringer, and after that, pretty quick, Blackmore's, dissatisfied with the band's direction and off, to do things with Dio and company. So yeah, it's a good album in Purple's catalog, but kind of a weird turning point for not just because of the lineup changes.
I gotta say, Blackmore's solo, or he made Deep Purple outside of Deep Purple, and his version of Deep Purple was pretty killer with Dio in it.
Yep,
I loved it. So good. First 3 albums are great.
Yep, can't argue. I mean, there was a point there where you had, this whole family of Deep Purple alumni bands, that were all doing pretty well, in different veins. You had, of course, Deep Purple itself. You had Blackmore and Rainbow. You had, Coverdale, of course, eventually moving on with Whitesnake. I know I'm forgetting others, but you had, Ian Gillan, actually, for a hot minute there, the Gillan band was a, pretty hot commodity in the UK scene, at least. So, yeah, there was a scene right there around the turn of the decade from the 70s to the 80s where, most of those bands were doing okay. And Deep Purple itself by that point, of course, had fallen apart, but guys had gone on to other projects and, made some good music. There was always talent in that band.
It took a minute for Coverdale, but you got to admit he traded up. I mean, Whitesnake was pretty huge there for a hot minute.
Oh, yeah.
Starting with Slide It In, I think, is where the big change started for them.
Yeah. And Slide, Whitesnake, reportedly did very good early on in the UK. It just took them a long time to kind of, crack the code for the American market, which was always a different thing and always kind of difficult for a lot of British bands at that time.
All right,
Marty, back to you.
All right, another one of those, what the hell's wrong with you, Fat Man? Well, I don't know. There's a lot. But when I first heard this record, I hated it. This album, admittedly, is kind of a mess. It's just so raw and evil. And the first album, I think, is a little bit more Motorhead-ish to me. This one is just more black metal. It's just more straight evil. It sounds like this cover, it just is, songs like Possessed, and I mean, there's some good songs on here, but it took a minute to get over how raw, and it is like just a raw arcing wire. His vocals were just so raw and evil and sinister. It sounded sloppy, like it was just barely holding together. But this is the blueprint. This and the album after, Under the Sign of the Black Mark. That's my favorite of the first 3 for sure. That's the most formed, realized. The whole style comes to fruition on that record, and it's more or less the blueprint for Scandinavian black metal, the second wave. Bathory is the blueprint for the second wave of black metal, and it's a classic. I listened to it. Of the first 3, this is the one I listened to the least still, but it grew on me. I ended up getting it, and once I get past my initial thoughts and disappointments, it's I usually come around, and I did. I come around on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a controversial album. There are people that love it, and there are people that really dislike it. Which, to me, and you can say that about a lot of the Bathory albums, and I think that's the mark of a good band, when you have a lot of people with very different opinions on the albums. It's not that everybody just loves these 2 or 3 albums, and the rest are kind of, a distant second, third, fourth place. Bathory, people rank those albums so differently. And it's worth noting, some folks have asked from time to time why we haven't done a Bathory episode. We have a guest lined up for that in the future. It's on their schedule, though. They're working on a project, and when that project's done, they will come on, and we shall talk Bathory for sure. But
Yep,
yeah,
it'll be a big doings. It'll be a big doings for sure.
Yes, but that topic is on hold until our guest is ready. Yep. Absolutely. But yeah.
All right.
Excuse me.
You're up.
Yep. And one thing before I move on off of this, Jeff just mentioned it in the chat, but yes, Jeff and I are going to do one of his dad album episodes over on his channel in the near future, and we're doing Deep Purple. So if you want to hear us argue about what is the definitive Deep Purple album, check that out. Jeff's done several episodes of that at this point, and it's very fun. Marty, you did the first one with them, and the second one?
Yeah, a lot of fun. Good talk, good conversation, and you don't go into it thinking you're going to change anybody's mind, but it's fun to talk about some classic records for an hour. It's a good time.
Yeah, it's a fun concept for a show, because you're going, the idea isn't to convince the other person. It's just, here's two different perspectives on the same question.
Yep.
And you kind of see them side by side. So yep, looking forward to that when Jeff and I get to do it. All right, here's a band I have shamefully admitted to in the past. I liked some of their other stuff the first time I heard it, but there were a couple of albums that they just really went in one ear and out the other. And it was bad on me. One of them was this. I had the EP, liked the EP. I had Operation Mindcrime, liked Operation Mindcrime. Got this one in between. I got rid of it. Didn't like it at all. While later, I was at least, I had this much intelligence at the time. I was dumb enough to get rid of it, but I was smart enough to run it off onto a blank TDK tape before I got rid of it, just in case I ever wanted to hear it again. And a couple of months later, I wanted to hear it again. And I just immediately thought, oh, what have I done? This is stupid. And yes, I did the same thing with Rage for Order. I showed that one also. These two albums just did not click for me at first. And looking back on it, I think the problem was that, especially with this one, the production's a little different on this one. It's a little cold sounding. It doesn't have that, real strong Iron Maiden gallopy worship that the EP did. But this also isn't as developed, and as polished and as mature a work as Operation Mindcrime was. And so, I know these two reference points on the end, and this thing in the middle, it's not really that close to either of them. And as such, it just kind of fell through the cracks. Just like, it's not that type of Queensryche or this type of Queensryche. I don't know what to do with this. That is kind of the point of this show. Is sometimes these things just don't work the first time. And for me, it was just a matter of, this, I was expecting, in this case, it could have gone, if it had been this or that, if it had been like the EP or Mindcrime, I'd have been happy. And it wasn't like either. And I just wasn't ready to branch out into a third direction for Queensryche, I guess. But yes, I went back. I replayed the TDK. I cursed softly to myself for several minutes and immediately started looking around on eBay to get copies of them back. And I have, and I've never gotten rid of them since, and I never will. They're both good albums. This album in particular, I think, gets a little overlooked. It's not as arty as Rage for Order or Mindcrime, of course. It's still a very, very well executed album. Deserves a little more praise than it gets in the Queensryche catalog.
Indeed. I think you broke the internet with your comment there, Alan. There's people that are still swirling in disbelief that you hated it initially.
Yeah, it did. It really was just like went right in and just like, nope, I got no use for this. This isn't Mindcrime. This isn't the EP. Don't need it.
Yep.
My bad.
All right. Well, this one is kind of obvious. I mean, this might have been a tough sell for a lot of people, but Manowar. I mean, it isn't just this record. It's Manowar in general. I mean,
it's not you. It's Manowar.
It's not me. It's Manowar. I mean, but then I stared deep into Joey DeMaio's loincloth and realized the error of my ways. I got to say, I struggled with this band, and this was about the time Jeff Wagner made me a Manowar mixtape that I ended up passing on to friends. I still listen to it to this day. It was right around the late 90s when I was writing for Metal Maniacs. And of course, he put all the hits on there from the Ross the Boss era. And it was okay. I'd listen to it in the car once in a while. I'm like, God, this shit's so cheesy. I'm Mr. Black Metal guy, Mr. Death Metal guy. Wanted to be cult as cult could be, and it wasn't until I saw them. I saw them at the first ever New England Metal and Hardcore Festival. They were headliners one of the nights, and kind of blew me away. A packed theater. It's funny. I've seen Manowar twice. I've seen them in a packed theater where people were freaking out for them. And I've seen them at St. Andrews Hall in Detroit in front of 15, 20 people. They phone it in. When there's nobody there, they don't play to the crowd. They phone it in. It's ridiculous. But this night they were amazing. And seeing it live, hearing the volume, hearing the songs, the purity of the songs, I went back to my little tape, started listening to it a little more diligently with a newfound appreciation. And then it was off to the races buying the records. And man, these early ones, especially with Ross the Boss, getting rid of him was a big mistake, man. There was something special about Manowar when he was in the band. But anyway, yeah, I love this stuff now. You just have to, every time in a metalhead's life where you have to say what level of cheese you are fine with consuming. As it turns out, the older I'm getting, and you're going to see here later in the stack, I can eat a lot of cheese, baby. Yep. Hated Manowar initially. Love it. All right.
I guess Ken was what was Ken into before metal? One has to wonder.
He was into fighting a placenta for more food, I think. He was born into metal, is what you're supposed to say, Ken.
I'm just seeing Ken's face now, like plus give me more nachos.
More food.
Shake some cheese out of the placenta somehow.
Yeah.
Hilarious and disturbing all at once. I'm completely off, a bit rattled now, but
I try to get you at least once every week. We try to keep you on your toes.
It was no green bean casserole incident, but yeah.
Say what you want. Green bean casserole rules. I'll die on that hill.
The holiday season is coming back. All right. Well, yes, my own Manowar story.
The same album, even. That's hilarious.
And it very much was the same album. And my issue with this album when I first heard it was, my introduction to Manowar, like a lot of people, probably was, Kings of Metal. So, and from there, I was kind of slowly working backwards. So, I knew the Atlantic stuff, which big, colorful, bright, huge sound to it and all. And then one day stumbled into this. Actually, and if I remember correctly, my mom bought this for me at a record show with my dad. I didn't go for whatever reason. I probably was doing marching band or something that weekend. And they went to the record show, and Mom, bless her heart, would always, she wasn't there to buy records. She was just there to, hang out, see what Dad was doing, make sure he didn't spend all his money at once. But, she would flip around through boxes and kind of keep an eye out for things I might be interested in if I wasn't there. And so, yeah, she found a copy of Manowar's Into Glory Ride and picked it up for me. And was like, oh, cool. I don't know that album by them. The first problem looking at the cover, yes, very silly with the costumes. All beyond that, just the quality of the photo and the color, it looks like something straight out of 1971.
Well, that's kind of where they came from,
It is, but it was made in 83, and I'm seeing it in 1992 or 3 or something. So it's just like, you look at it, it's just like, this definitely looks really primitive for somebody who's only been seeing their Atlantic records, with all the big Ken Kelly kind of artwork and stuff on the covers and all the bright stuff and the huge blow your speaker sound. And you look at this and it's just like, keep on trucking, dudes. You got bell bottoms on under those big fluffy boots. So the cover was definitely kind of a bit off-putting, and a lot of the stuff this album overall is kind of slow in pacing. It's moves at a slower speed for a lot of tracks. It plays up a little bit more the doomy sound to it, which again is a bit jarring if you've only heard Fighting the World and Kings of Metal. where it's Wheels of Fire and these huge, big, epic chanties, lift your sword kind of songs. And some of these really kind of take their time and plod along, and they're a little more grim sounding. So yeah, it wasn't until my this didn't do a whole lot for me. It's just like, I don't think that's the kind of Manowar I'm that interested in. Sign of the Hammer, when I heard that was great. Hail to England, heard that, it was great. Even the first one. Now, funnily enough, the first Manowar album didn't bother me when I heard that, and I think Mom got me that one too. Come to think of it, pretty sure she did. Because that one, has its own sound. You put that on, and it's this, almost, big kind of, goofy, obnoxious kind of, rock thing. We've talked about it before with, just the crazy lyrics of, being, shell shocked and post traumatic stress, and going around, flipping people off on your bike. It's a fun album. You listen to this, like, yeah, this is just the kind of, brain dead rock out and, have a big smile on your face thing. This one, what's her? She really is a cool lady. She's put up with a lot of records coming through that house between me and my dad, and she's always been very nice about it. So yeah, even the self-titled album, didn't mind that one. This was always the one that was a little bit of a tough sell for me for a very long time, just because it seemed a little too slow, drug a little bit too much, and the cover was always a little bit of a sticking point too. I have warmed up to it a lot more over the years. It ranks pretty high in the Manowar catalog for me now. But yeah, it's a little bit of a different album compared to a lot of the other stuff they did. It's not Kings of Metal Part 2. I guess it'd be Part 1, the prequel or something. But that's quite okay. Both albums are good for different reasons.
That album cover looks like someone had an idea to make Thundar the Barbarian the live action movie, and they're in the audition line to try out, and they're in the reject line.
But it's being made by like a bunch of students at State University of New York at Stony Brook, and they've got like a $300 budget, and they just spent half of it on bad pot or something. It doesn't quite work, guys. Didn't quite work. But
maybe it's the porno version of Thundar the Barbarian. That's maybe looks a little bit more like
Marty. Eyes up here. Attention, please. I want you to be very clear about something right now. If you ruin Ukla the Mock for me,
Ukla the slut.
If you ruin this childhood memory for me and somehow pervert it with some kind of, fart in a can, stick a jar up your butt kind of, tentacle porn thing.
One of my finest moments.
You are going to need a new co-host, son, because I am not sticking around with the person who abuses Thundar the Barbarian and twists it into something horrible, because that is innocence and pure delight and nothing but joy, and I won't have you besmirch it. Don't go there. You've already lost one guest tonight. You'll have to carry this show the rest of the way if you mess with Thundar. We just don't mess with certain things here.
Ryan, what would be the porno alternative to Thundar the Barbarian?
Keeping it, Ryan.
Keeping it PG-13.
Ryan, you're a better man than that, Ryan. Do not provoke the monkey over there. He's goading you. Don't fall for it. Okay. Now
that we've scared Alan and he drew a line in the sand, we better move on. All right.
It's important to set boundaries.
This one I didn't hate for long. We'll just say that. And Nathan's Madrigal by Ulver. The big shock here was grabbing the promo, throwing it in, and being utterly shocked at how shitty it sounded. The sound of this is terrible. It's like it makes the Unholy trilogy of Darkthrone sound like Mutt Lang produced it. It's bad. This is super raw, super antagonistic to the ears, but about third or fourth time through it, the riffs are so good on this record. This is such a well-composed black metal record. I quickly forgot about the sound, and the more I spun it, the sound ended up kind of enhancing the whole overall presentation for me, which is hilarious. In fact, they dedicate this album to Darkthrone. But This is for me the last Ulver I give a crap about. I know people say, but this album, but that album, but Perdition Temple, but this Blood Sun or whatever. Blood, I don't know. Don't care. Don't care. If I want Depeche Mode, I'll listen to Depeche Mode. But this is the Ulver I like. This and Bergtot, they've put out 2 great records for me, and this is one of them. But initially, woo, that photo shoot where they're wearing suits and around that car, and then saying they blew their budget on the photo shoot and instead of using it on the production. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Once you get used to the production, it works just fine. For me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one threw everybody for a loop.
Yeah. But man, the riffs are so good. And Garm's vocals are just scathing. So good.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that threw people for even more of a loop. You think about it now, and it doesn't seem that unusual for black metal bands to do all these kind of different crazy things and lo-fi stuff. At that time, black metal, second wave black metal, still relatively a new thing. And to have a band switching styles so rapidly from album to album to album was really, kind of mind-blowing. It's like, what is this band? The first album was one thing, then there's that acoustic folky thing. Now there's, Darkthrone on steroids. It's like people just like couldn't process, that a band would go in that many different directions so quickly.
All right, Ellen.
Okay, people can hate me for this one, because it's a very popular album, and I did not care for it. For a long time, I just, wanted nothing to do with it. Covenant, Morbid Angel. It's just like, part of the problem for this was it got a little bit too much play on the old college radio station. They kind of ran this one in the ground a bit when it came out. And the bigger problem for me was it didn't sound like Blessed Are the Sick. I was like, no, I like Blessed Are the Sick a lot more than what I'm hearing on these songs. To me, it sounded like they were just going, for a very sort of over-the-top, brutal beat. Let's see how extreme and brutal we can sound kind of vibe. And that's not what I wanted in Morbid Angel. So it's like, there are lots of bands that do that. You guys don't need to do that. So Covenant did not interest me there for quite a while.
No, I'm sorry, Devin. I am not mean like Alan is. I try to understand people's choices instead of punish them for them. That's just kind of how I was brought up,
Marty's a kind and generous person who doesn't deal with 338 freshmen every week. So you live in my world, son. You learn to set some rules and back them up.
Negative reinforcement helps kids learn.
Mm-hmm. Yep. How can you have your pudding when you haven't eaten your meat?
Yeah.
But for a long time, this was not interested in this one. Now, yes, like it quite a bit. Again, it ranks pretty high among the Morbid Angel albums. I've listened to it more. I can pick it apart more than I could at first. It probably, again, I don't think it helped. They were probably playing the same 3 songs over and over and over. And it was a point where I was getting kind of tired of death metal. They would have been playing it in probably late 93, early 94. This was very much a window where it's just like, can we listen to something on the radio? I'd call in and be like, hey, can you guys play something that's not death metal? How about some Manowar, Sabotage? I'd go through like 5 or 6 bands where it's like, we don't have that. We don't have that. We don't have that. I'm just like, what do you have that's not got Cookie Monster vocals in it? They dig around and find something, but just like, so that didn't help matters any. But Morbid Angel's Covenant was not what I was looking for in Morbid Angel around that time frame. But very good album. Like a lot of their albums from that whole run, A through D works very, very well for me at this point. We've covered this band before with Craig Zoller, who, folks, will be back on to discuss another band here before the year is done. But C was the letter I had to kind of work around there for a while. But now Covenant is definitely a cool one that ashamed to say just was not interested in when it came out.
And some people are maybe confusing the topic. We start off disliking the album, but end up loving the album. So it's That's the kind of the theme here tonight. So it isn't, we're not showing and say I still hate this. We're saying that I hated it initially, but now I like it.
The album just made a bad first impression,
Yep.
but over time, we warmed up to it and stuff. That was, kind of, it was a funny one. Some folks, complimented the thumbnail art earlier, which thank you. It was a weird topic to find a thumbnail for, but then I was like, well, it's albums we kind of had to warm up to over time. We kind of started very icy on them, and then gradually they, warmed up. So that's why we did the kind of, ice and fire background for the thumbnail tonight. But now let's see what Marty didn't like at first, but then kind of warmed up to.
Grand Declaration of War and Mayhem. Speaking of S. Craig Zoller and Jeff Wagner, they loved this album when it came out. And I was writing for Maniacs at the time. We'd have open debates. They loved it. I hated it. And it was a pretty furious debate most of the time. Always funny. Good times. Always debating with those two is always a lot of fun. But something clicked, and it's not too long ago, probably in the last 5-10 years. I end up starting to really kind of get this record, and I now typically when I listen to Mayhem, this is the album I grab. It's something about it now. It's one of those records that aged, I think it was a little bit ahead of its time, maybe a little too soon. Very polarizing, and I was on the traditional orthodox black metal team, and but I finally came around to it, and now it's just, I get it. The Martial Industrial influence is strong on here. Maniac's weird vocals work really well in this context. Runa Eriksson's strange ear for creating avant-garde riff ideas really shines through on here. He kind of, after this, they kind of fell back in line with, their legacy more or less, but this is very cool record for me now. When it came out, I hated it. And I really enjoyed slamming on this record. It was easy and fun, but yeah, I've eaten a lot of crow over the years, and this is one of them. End up loving it. And everybody tells me check out the remix version of it. It's great. I haven't got around to it. I will eventually check it out, but I like the way this sounds cold and calculated and bizarro. So, yep, very cool.
Yep. Yeah, that was a very controversial album when it came out. And it was a good example of something we talked about earlier, where a lot of people had that hyped up in their mind with a certain expectation when it was going to come out. They were really wanting it and hoping for it to be a Day Mysterious Part 2 kind of thing, which they probably should have known it wasn't going to. They heard the Wolf Slayer Abyss EP. That was definitely meant as a preview of what was going to come. But yeah, some folks when it came out really thought it was, it really was kind of grand, and other people really despised that album.
Yeah.
Yeah, it clicked with me pretty fast, and I can't really say why, but it's one that, I would sit and I gave it a few close listens with headphones the first time I got it, and I think that kind of helped me figure out what they were doing a little faster than if I had just played it as background music. But yeah, very, very controversial album, and a lot of different takes on it with folks in the chat. Everyone from I can see it being a hard pick to I loved it instantly to I still hate that album.
Yep, exactly. It's very polarizing. Still to this day.
Absolutely.
Okay, Alan.
Let's do it.
Hey, 100 people here, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you all very
much.
much.
Our guest couldn't make it. He ended up having some tech issues we couldn't figure out, and he looked pretty tired from working all day anyway. So,
his mic was just, all we could hear on his mic was an echo of ourselves.
Yeah,
so
he was very quiet, and there was like a super long delay. It wasn't going to work. It would have been way more frustration than any of us would want for you guys to watch.
Yeah, sometimes it just won't work. It's actually really the first time we've had a major tech issue where someone couldn't appear, and we'll get Matt back on another night for another topic. Once things are worked out. All right, here is one from about 20 years ago that I'd heard a song or two from and thought it showed some promise, so I went ahead and ordered it and got it and wasn't real keen on it for a while. warmed up to it, but it took a lot of spins to get going. It is the Gates of Slumber with Conqueror. This is their third album. This is one band that they literally were part of a movement, called the True Sons of Doom. Gives you an idea of what they're going for. Very Conan flavored artwork. They're kind of in that epic Doom style. Very good at it. They did several albums over the years with it. This, as I said, was album number 3. It was the first time I had heard about the band. And I think it was the song, was it Lair of the Iceworm? I think was the one I had heard off of this. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's kind of heavy, kind of catchy. Works in that style. It's like Manila Road, with less weird vocals, but focusing on the heavy, doomy parts. But yeah, playing it through the first several times, I was like, this is a kind of a slow, kind of dull album. Was my first impression of it. It's like there's not a lot of energy here. It's kind of quiet, and it just feels kind of boring. I'm like, well, there's at least the one song I like, so maybe if I play it a little bit more, I'll find another one. And this really was an incremental album. After 1 or 2 more spins, another track started to stand out. It's like, okay, now there's 2 that are interesting. Couple more spins, like, okay, I also like this third track now. And so it kind of slowly, gradually built itself up. And eventually it's like, yeah, most of this album is quite good. A lot of the songs, again, very fantasy based. The last part of it literally is called, the Dark Valley Suite, reference to Robert Howard's life, the author of all the Conan stuff. So yeah, turned out to be a really solid album. After this, I followed the band moving forward. I worked my way back and got their earlier albums. I actually got to see them play live once and chat with them just very briefly after the set. They did a killer live show. Really nice guys afterward too. They were just very polite, really happy to have a chance to play out for folks. But yeah, this one literally is almost like song by song, kind of working its way a little bit higher with every couple of listens. Because it is as an epic doom album, it is a bit slow. The songs are a bit longer. It's part of that genre, and it usually doesn't bother me much. But for some reason, this album just did not want to immediately click. But I'm glad I gave it enough time and enough spins that it did, because it was a cool band. It was a shame when they kind of fell apart. Moved on to other projects. I think at one point they had kind of gotten back together. I kind of lost track of things. They unfortunately had multiple members that had passed away as well. So that also, of course, put a major damper on things.
You hold up the cover again.
Mm-hmm.
First thing you did, I've thought of when the sexual innuendo. I'm like, oh, look at that guy. He's got himself a little head. And he's holding a little head.
That he is.
Yep. And the naked lady there. I'm like, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. This, is, kind of, a modern rendition of, one of the classic, Conan poses, with, the sword and the loincloth. And Conan always, the amazing thing wasn't that Conan could kill 1,000 men with his sword. The amazing part that was he could always do it, with a topless woman, wrapped around one leg begging for help. That's what really made it spectacular. It's like, how do you kill those people having to drag her along at the same time? I know she probably weighs 95 pounds,
Make
but
do.
Still, that's got to cut down your mobility in the middle of a battle. Yeah. But yeah, it's so many pictures.
Crom gives you the extra power to get through those situations.
It's just always that same pose of, chest, sword, and please save me, wrapped around. It's like, why don't you go sit over there, honey, and just wait this out. Let me slay the 5,000 orcs who are trying to, take your maidenhood. And then you can come wrap yourself around me. And, that was always, Howard would end the chapter or the short story. But yeah, it's also kind of a bit misleading, just to go off on a bit, because I've been rereading some of Howard's early stuff lately. The better Conan stories never have any of those elements in them. They just don't. They either don't have a female character like that, or if they do, it's a stronger female character like Queen of the Black Coast. The Conan stories that start to have the waif who's absolutely useless other than to stand there and need protecting are often the ones that, critically, get a bit panned, or is yeah, this is when he was just trying to really, and even he would admit in letters to people, hey, this sells. I need money. So sure, I can churn this out really fast. And I know one of these magazines is going to buy it. So even Howard knew that some of those stories where it was all about, yeah, Conan must protect the woman, that wasn't his strongest work with the character.
Yeah.
End rant.
Right on. Man, it really pains me to hold this one up because I championed this record to my grave. But when it first came out, Lost Horizons Awakening the World. Oh boy. Again, Zoller, love this. And I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to accept the cheese in my life. And once I finally, cast my cult side away, it for me, initially this was too positive, too uplifting, too many positive messages. I just didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear it.
It's okay to have fun, Marty. It's fun to have fun.
It's one thing to have fun, and it's one thing having some guy tell me everything's to be cool and all right, and I just need to, trust in my metal self and my inner power and all that other stuff. It felt like it was like an Oprah, the book of the month, telling me in metal that everything was going to be great, and I was at a point in my life I didn't want to hear it. So, but once I got over it, man, exactly. Cold Void Nebular, best power metal album ever. It really is. This is a gem. This is an absolute gem. Wade, definitely start off with this one, Awakening the World, and then A Flame to the Ground Beneath. Is this ×2? It's a little less catchy and a lot more keyboard based, but it's still really good. But this is great. When I first heard it, it made me laugh because it was so positive. But I got it. And of course, you got dudes in capes and body paint and enslaving the rats, and it's a lot to take when you're not in the mindset. But man, once you get over it and beyond, it is a banger from start to finish. Love the record. Love the band. Wish they did more.
Yep. Yeah, that was one. I didn't have a bad reaction the first time I heard it. I wasn't immediately like super hyped on the band, and other folks were, I don't know if I wasn't quite in a power metal mood when that came out, or if I just didn't catch on to it. Because I remember discussing that one with folks like on the old Lapland forum, and there were some people, like Josh up the Iron, so we're very hyped on that band right away. And I remember I was kind of lukewarm. I was like, yeah, it's okay. I'm not quite sure why y'all are blowing it up like the best thing ever. So it took me a while to be like, okay, yeah, maybe it's not the best thing ever, but maybe it's in the discussion at least.
Yep.
So some folks were definitely ahead of the curve compared to me on that one.
Wade C says the CD is currently $65 on Discogs. Wow,
that is too much, Wade. Do not pay that for it.
It's worth it. It's worth every penny, but yeah, it's a bit much.
Dig around, Wade. I know when I was looking for a copy of their second album, Discogs copies were, and even eBay copies were pretty high. Poke around in a few other corners of the internet and you can find them for a much more sane price. Absolutely.
I found both of my copies in Music Express in Kalamazoo, both of them used for under $10.
Yeah. I ended up getting
years ago, but yeah.
I ended up getting the second one, even just within the past few. I had it on MP3 forever, but I got the second one just in the past couple of years for like $8 used. No, maybe it was 10, but it was nothing crazy. So it's out there with some patience.
Dwayne, what's up, man? Hope you're doing well, brother.
Yep. Hello to Dwayne. Hello to everybody. Big crowd tonight, which is really fun to see. Again, folks, sorry Matt couldn't had to bail, but Mike was just not going to work. So
Mike and delay bad.
Yeah. It was beyond functional. Nobody's fault. Tech does that.
It happens.
It does. You know what else happens? Sometimes you hear a really great album for the first time and you just don't get it. Or
it happens a lot.
It does happen a lot. And it happened to me with this. Candlemass.
Everybody, I'm really sorry. Alan, he's having some tech issues tonight too, so I might be the one. Anyway.
Let me back in.
Sorry.
Yeah. Problems with this one were that I knew the Messiah Marklin era Candlemass stuff.
Yeah.
I heard at least one, if not two of those albums and loved them to death. Got this one not realizing that he didn't sing on it. So the first impression was like, who the fuck is that? It's not hard to recognize Messiah's voice. Besides King Diamond, he's one of the more recognizable.
And hearing the material with Leaf singing it, Leif singing it on that Nemesis material, it's even worse.
That happened later. But
yeah.
I had gotten this at a record show. It was like I'm pretty sure it was the old Black Dragon pressing. Take it home, put it on. The production on that pressing is not amazing to start with. And then, it's, kind of, a little bit, thin, little high sounding. And, then you have, this other vocalist, coming on doing these songs. And I'm just like, whoa, wait a minute. Huh? Is this the same band that, did Ancient Dreams and Tales of Creation? What the hell's happening here? Those albums, have, much stronger production, a lot more bottom heavy sounding. And of course, with, Messiah's vocals, obviously, give them, this, huge, big, epic kind of, feel. This old vinyl pressing of Epicus, has none of those things. And this is like, that's a shame. As I played it more, I realized okay, there are some, good songs on here. But it took me a while to appreciate that, this vocalist is also very good. And despite, the production limitations, it's actually a really solid album from start to finish. I love it to death now. But this was a case of I was buying it very much thinking it was going to be one thing, not realizing there was a different vocalist. And that really tanked it for me there for quite a while. It took a while for me to kind of reset my brain and understand that it's okay. It's still Candlemass. Candlemass is one of those bands that's gone through several vocalists, and I don't think they've ever had a bad one. It's always worked out, and they managed to almost always sound like Candlemass. They had that weird period in the 90s, but I like that period.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, they were doing something different, but something very cool. And again, the vocalist worked great for it at the time. So the same was true here. Different vocalist, but it worked fine. They just needed a big sticker on here. If there'd been a big sticker like right over here with saying like, featuring not Messiah Markland, I would have still bought it. And then I would have been, when the needle went down, I'd been like, okay, this is going to be somebody different. I honestly suspect I'd have had a very different initial impression, but there was no sticker and I was caught very, very off guard.
Right. All right.
So it was.
Okay. Both of these albums were tough for me. How did I do that for? Draconian Times, Paradise Lost. I'm a big first album Gothic and the second album Gothic fan.
Mm-hmm.
And once Nick started singing like a buff James Hetfield, I struggled hard with it. Shades of God I thought was really a bland record. They had their drummer, which they asked to leave. He was not a good drummer. That didn't help. Icon was better. This record, it's very commercial. Very commercial. It's God, I don't know how to describe this. It's very, all I can say is commercial. It's just it's got a Gothic influence to it. It's kind of Metallica-ish the way Nick is singing. But the thing of it is, I had to review it for something. So I kept listening to it. The music is so infinitely catchy and heavy and well written. And the singing is really good. Again, I had to get outside of my cult mental state, and the songs grew on me really fast. I'm a big fan of earworms, and this album is filled with them. They made it even harder with this one. In fact, when I got this promo in the mail, I laughed, took it out, put it back in its case, and threw it in the garbage can. I said, this is hot, stinking garbage. This is awful. Wow. Well, again, I had to cover it. I'm like, well, I shouldn't throw it away. That's probably dumb. So I put it on to review it and started listening to it. The earworms got me. It's so catchy and poppy. In fact, this is more synth driven. Piano. It's kind of a sad record, I don't know. It's just they came a long way from where they started, which cheers to them. That's why they are still a band people still care about. They went even further away from metal on that Host record. They got pretty electronic for a while there as well, which again, fine. They've circled back around. They're doing the heavy stuff again with the Nick's death vocals, and all's right in the world as far as that goes. But here was a pretty interesting commercial turn for them. I ended up really loving these records, and especially Draconian Times. This is kind of a special record. It's got a special mood about it. It very much a sound of the 90s to me. Well, wait, 2000, early 2000s. I don't remember when this came out.
95 for
it's got a 90s.
I just had to check myself.
Yeah, it's got a feel of the 90s here, and it's all right. It's good. It's good. It's a definite keeper in the collection. Hated it. End up loving it. Am I getting crucified in the?
Folks are kind of back and forth on it.
Yeah.
There's some that like it, some that don't. Yeah, I always had issues with that album too, and I haven't heard it in forever, so yeah. I can't even comment on it really. But yes, there were a lot of comparisons to Hetfield at the time.
Yeah,
and yes, it definitely had that vibe of pushing, wanting to. This is the album we want to make us popular, which didn't really give people a good first impression by itself. That you're trying to do that vibe, are you? Is this going to be like a Reload kind of situation? I always kind of equated it with Iced Earth's The Dark Saga, which came out less than a year later.
Yeah,
because there was another.
That was huge. That record was huge for the band and Century Media. Huge.
And it was another case where the band was trying to be like a little less intense, maybe slightly gothy, but it very much felt like here's the album that's supposed to make us popular, and that was one that was a disappointment to me. So yeah, Draconian Times, has always had some weird mental baggage with it because of the albums I associate it with.
The thing that is good about this is the guys in this band are pretty smart dudes, and they're some punk guys, and they got into metal, and they went from punk to metal, and kind of like it's kind of the lineage of the UK guys. They'd always start in punk, and then they start getting heavier as they went. But they went down this path, and they just did it, and they're like, this is where we're at right now. I don't remember them coming out in the press saying metal is dumb, our past records are garbage, like Opeth when the whole Heritage album came around, where they dropped the death vocals and are okay, we're a prog band now, fine. But it's like Michael was pissed off at metal. Every interview I read with him, it's like he was sick of people yelling, scream, do brutal vocals live, and he was like out to like hurt the metal fans with his choices here. And metal is, I'm not metal anymore, and I'm beyond that type of. That just pissed me off. I've outgrown that.
Yeah.
Pet my bald cat and shit like that. But it's just, it doesn't. This is the way they should just do it with class. You're gonna change. So yeah, we're trying some different shit. This is kind of where we're at right now. Old shit's fine. That's where we were at then. This is where we're at now. And that's all Michael had to do. But nope, he had to lamb-based metal and metalheads, and the choice for why Opeth was no longer brutal, and just shut up. Just play your music and shut up. Anyway, Alan.
Let's see. Next one on top of the stack. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this album did nothing for me the first few times I heard it. Had to revisit it later on. It was Danzig, number 4. Not much to see there. Maybe if we get it just right, you can see a little bit of it. There we go. Yeah, I liked the first 3 Danzig albums. I felt like each one had gotten better than the previous one. I still play How the Gods Kill on a semi-regular basis, and I've been playing it for 30 years, I guess, at this point. So like his work quite a bit. This one came out. I don't know if I bought it the day it came out, but I probably bought it, sometime that first week or so. And I just was immediately kind of disappointed. I'm like, well, it wasn't that it was awful or anything, but just like, this is not as good as what they've done before. And again, it'd been like, first album, good. Second album, better. Third album, even better. Fourth album, well, we're back down here somewhere. And so that was in itself was just a big turnoff to the album. Thinking back on it, I can't really put my finger on what it was that bothered me about the album. I just didn't want to sink in for some reason. There are some of the songs that I think are maybe a little weak compared to some of the others. There's a point or two here where he's using a couple of vocal effects, which I didn't think were necessary, but yeah, eventually I circled back around to it, played it some more and started, again, it was one of those situations where I'd find a couple of songs I'd like, then I'd find a couple more songs I'd like, and eventually with time, we were like, no, this is pretty good. It deserves to be on the shelf along with the other three. I still like the other three albums better, but no, this one, gets a thumbs up at the end of the day also. Yeah, it was a band that seemed to be on the right trajectory, and for whatever reason, something about it, and I still, like I said, I still have a little trouble figuring out why this one doesn't work for me as well as the other three. Some of the songs I like a bit, but I never play it either. Looking at it now, Brand New God is pretty good. Little Whip is one I didn't think much of. I remember that one just feeling like it was a little too simple, a little too repetitive. But Going Down to Die was good. Until You Call in the Dark is very good. What else have we got on here? Sadistical, I think, is one that, it has a little different vibe to it, but it wasn't bad. It was just, him trying something else. The Closer, if I remember right, Let It Be Captured, I liked. So there's a good amount of songs on here I do like and do remember now that I'm looking at the titles. But just something about it didn't work on first impression. That one took a lot more spins to get into compared to the first few albums. To be fair, the first time I heard the first Danzig album, I wasn't nuts about it either. But that one I got on board with pretty fast. This one took longer. And of course, then, Danzig 5 came out, and we all wished for the good old days of Danzig 4.
All right. Well, when this record came out, this is not what I wanted to hear. And it has been maybe 10 years, maybe 15 that I started to finally get it and like it. But when Voivod's Angel Rat came out, oh boy, I was pissed. I wasn't disappointed. I was pissed. I might have taken it back. I had it on tape. I might have taken it back to Camelot and said, this tape is broke. I needed something different. But Nothing Face was kind of writing on the wall. They started to get a little more proggy there, but they kept an edge to it, even though it was really finely produced, maybe a little overproduced. But Dimension Hatros is my be-all, end-all Voivod record. I will always love that to the end. It's my favorite. This was about as far away from that as you could get. Yes, it still sounded like Voivod, but there was like Panorama. It's a kind of a rockin' song. It seemed very far removed from the weird metal, proto sci-fi metal track they were on. And then Clouds in My House, The Prow, it just got more and more proggy. And for the time, it just seemed completely neutered of anything aggressive and interesting and weird and twisted. I liked Voivod with a bit of heaviness to him. And this didn't have it when it came out for me. Again, it's been 10 or 15 years. And I think it might have been the album that came after this one.
The 3D.
Yeah, the 3D one. Why can't I? Outer Limits. That was this, but with more them kind of going back into Nothing Face and maybe a little Dimension Hatros. There was some more aggression on the album after this. So that made me start to re-listen to this again. Now I listen to this and I love it. I think it's great. It's weird. It's quirky. It's Voivod. I get it. I just wasn't ready for it when it came out. I wanted more. I wanted Dimension Hatros until the end for that band, which they're kind of back doing again, which is great. But this was a tough one for me. Out of all their albums, I hated this. I like the Eric Forrest records. I didn't like this one. I do now. I do like it, but yeah, tough one to swallow. Again, Jeff Wagner was a champion of this. Oh, you got to check it out again. I'm like, no, dude, I don't got to check it out again. It sucks. I know it sucks. Well, he's right. And my brain finally came around to this one.
Yeah, I think Mike just said, yeah, didn't really know anybody who liked that album at first. Jeff's about the only person
He
I've ever
he
come
loved it when
across
it
that
came out.
liked it
Yep.
really quickly after the release. Yeah, it's it's one that a lot of people had trouble with.
Here's a good question.
What do we got?
If you hate an album the first 2 or 3 times, what makes you keep going back to it? Got to be something in there that keeps drawing you back in.
That is a very good question.
It's a good question.
Do you want to tackle that first, or you want me to?
Well, back when this album came out, again, I didn't make much money, and I was younger, and the tapes I bought, I had to spend time with. Even if I hated it, I had to listen to it, because I couldn't just, like nowadays, you get something that sucks, it's like, oh, whatever. I mean, there's thousands of other things to listen to, and especially if it's like a band that you love, like Voivod. I'm going to circle back around to it every year or two, even if I, as an adult, if I dislike something, and if it's a band that I love and have tons of respect for, I'm going to keep it. And I'm going to keep circling back around, because I might change. There's a lot of musical input that happens throughout the years, in all different styles, and it all molds the way you process music. And it's always one band that shifts your paradigm to, oh, okay, I understand other things like this now. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, good points. It can vary a lot. I'm just looking back at some of the records I've shown, and different things in different cases made me go back. Like with Danzig 4, what made me go back was I like the first 3 albums so much.
Sure.
And looking at it, it's like it's the same lineup. It came out, there's not some big gap in time. They didn't radically
suck.
Yeah, they didn't radically change their sound. There's no lineup change that caused a shift in direction. So maybe it's not the album. Maybe it's me. Let's give it another chance.
Again, mood is a big part.
Yeah.
Are you in the mood for this?
Yeah. With Covenant, a big part of it was, getting more into some of the later, Morbid Angel albums that I didn't pay attention to for a long time. Like, Gateways of Annihilation. Hey, this is really fucking good. And stuff like that. It's like, okay, I liked A, I liked B, I like D, I like G. Everybody always says C is really good. Maybe I should give that another chance. I'm kind of working my way around it for some reason. With Gates of Slumber, there was the one song that I really liked. I'm like, it's kind of weird if there's just that one song and nothing else here. Let's play it a few more times and see if it'll start to sink in. So yeah, I think it's different things but you're right. There is something there that's making you think this isn't as bad as the first impression. Maybe we've just got to give it another chance. But there's got to be some reason. There have been albums for sure that I have played and I've hated, and there's just like there's no redeeming value here in my opinion. I just walk away and I don't go back to it. That happens too.
Yeah.
But with these, looking at the stack, there's usually something that's prompting you to go back. Like again, we talked about Manowar. Loved so much the other Manowar. It was another case of like, I guess I just need to revisit that one for sure. I talked about Venom. I just kind of had to work my way into it song by song. When I heard other songs on compilations by Venom, I'm like, well, I like that song, and I like that song, and I like that song. Yeah, let's just play the album again. Oh, okay, yeah, I like the album now. But very good question, Mike.
All right, Alan, you're up.
Okay. This one I think somebody sent me in a tape trade. And this was another case of just like, I don't know what this band is doing, and I just don't care right now. It was Acid Bath's first one, When the Kite String Pops.
I still don't care.
Fair enough.
The southern stuff, the I Hate Gods, the Exhorter, the Acid Baths, the Goat Whore, the Soylent Greens, none of those bands, the Downs, the Panteras, they just don't click for me. I don't know what it is about the southern sound. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
Stuck up Yankee you.
Yeah, the Yankee, dumb Yankee.
Some of these albums I like, some I don't. But someone had sent this to me, and it was new at the time. I played it, once or twice. It's like, it feels kind of spastic, which isn't something I typically enjoy in heavy music. And so I don't know if I'd even asked for it in the trade or if they just kind of included it. So I just kind of feel like, okay, yeah, whatever. Don't think that's for me. What got me to come back around to this one was when their second album came out. I saw it advertised, Pagan Terrorism Tactics. It's got the weird cover art with, the Easter bunnies and the Jesus puppet and all that stuff. I'm thinking, yep, that looks like the same weirdness on the other one. Not interested in that. But it ended up getting ranked really, really highly on like some of those like, best of year lists by Sue Knowles, who was writing for Metal Maniacs at the time. Now Sue Verica, who's been on the show with us a few times
And
before.
we'll be back soon.
And yes, we've got Sue on the calendar coming up in a few weeks with a really fun idea for a show. And I was familiar enough with Sue's writing that's just like, if she ranks it that high, I ought to at least check it out. Even though it's this same band and I didn't care for the other album at all, maybe I should. I had seen the album sitting at the local record store. I'm just like, I can't believe they made another album. And then I saw Sue's got it as like one of the best albums of the whole year. Okay. And I think to help it out, I didn't buy it right away, but I did get somebody to record it, like in another tape trade. So I was like, yeah, I can send you that. And they did. And I put it in the cassette player in my pickup truck, and drove around with it for a while. And just like, yeah, there are actually some good songs on here that are clicking pretty fast. So I ended up liking Pagan Terrorism Tactics pretty quickly. At which point I'm like, okay, I still have the tape of that other one. Let's go back and play that. I'm like, okay, this one's actually not that bad either. It's not as good as Pagan Terrorism Tactics. And the album at times does feel kind of like it's very jerky and maybe a little too out of control. But I still learn to appreciate it. So like, no, it's got enough good stuff going on that I do like the album. But it took hearing the second album in that case to go back and kind of appreciate the first one a bit more. And then, of course, unfortunately, band member passed away and fell apart. And then you got the excellent Agents of Oblivion album from Dax and some of the members. And if you are really into Acid Bath, Agents of Oblivion, and you really like Dax Riggs's voice, he did a bunch of solo stuff. If you've never checked it out, it is very cool stuff. Jeff and Hunter over at Radical Research did an episode on Dax Riggs' like solo post Agents of Oblivion career. And it was all new to me. I had no idea. I thought the guy had fallen off the face of the earth. I didn't know he had put out several more records of stuff after the fact. And I've tracked him down, and a lot of it is really, really good. I've always enjoyed his voice. I've always enjoyed his lyrics. Just his writing style is very cool and unique. So do the rest of you who maybe, like me, didn't know about those albums, go check them out if you're into Dax Riggs. It's worth your time to hear that material.
True that, Spirit. Jeff and Hunter do a great job on that podcast. Awesome and unique. Good stuff.
They really do. They've got good chemistry. There's good humor. Some of the topics they pick are interesting to me. Some of them I don't get into. Some of them I know nothing about, but I'll even listen to a lot of the ones I don't know a thing about, and I'll learn something, even if I'm not that interested in, the artist they're talking about that week. So yeah, it's a great show.
All right. I think I showed this last week. So twofer. Amorphis Elegy. Wasn't a big fan of the shift. Tommy still doing some death vocals on here, but they're few and far between. The new singer, don't remember his name. Is it in here? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Good solid voice. The thing of it is, this wasn't what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear weird, twisted death metal from Finland. Granted, Tales from a Thousand Lakes was starting to show a prog awakening. They embrace it here. But it still sounds like Amorphis, oddly enough. They kept enough death vocals mixed in here to keep guys like me trying to keep coming back. And once 2 or 3 or 4 times through this record, they're so catchy. Songs are so catchy. It snagged me. And I went from hating it to loving it, liking it. I can't say I love it. I love the first 2 albums. This is a fond appreciation. But it's a good record. They stayed in this vein for some time. Now they're kind of back to earlier stuff, but more modern and, evolved, I guess you should say. But this is a bold evolution. It really is, from their murky death metal beginnings to this, it's quite a travel. And it only took, let's be honest, the Finns, man, Sentence, their first 4 records sound nothing alike. Amorphis, first 4 records, first 3 records sound different. You know, it's weird how these bands are progressing so fast. But Amorphis, Elegy, good record. It took me a minute to get there, though.
Be right back.
Yep. Thank you again, everybody. It's been a busy night tonight with you guys. Thanks again. We really appreciate all of you. I am a little behind this week in getting. It's been I've been sick, working again. So there was no review this week. Sorry. Alan has got 2 in the hopper. So Monday there'll be a review for
Sulfur Eon. And then I'll probably post another one of his this week. I'll probably post both this week. So again, sorry. I was gonna maybe try to get one up this weekend, but it's not probably gonna happen. I got so much other stuff to do. But next week we're back on track. Again, sorry. Yeah, Marty's been under the weather this week. And yeah, a couple of folks have asked about the new Kirith Ungol album. Kellen and I are going to do sort of a tag team review on that one over on his site, Killing for Company. He's just been super busy, tied up with work and travel stuff lately too.
He's on vacation, 2-week vacation. Yep.
Yeah, so we will get to that one. But again, when he's ready, we will get to it, but it will come out a little bit later. It has been already, for folks that are curious about the new Kirith Ungol, it's been reviewed over on Banger TV. Sarah,
the clip she put up, man, it sounds pretty killer. I have not listened to the promo, but it sounds killer.
Yeah. There's one big, well, not to get really siderolled in it. If you watch that review and listen to the clip and get really jazzed about that album, do not run out and buy it based on the strength of that clip they keep playing over and over, because that is the only really fast up-tempo song on the whole album.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding. The rest of that album is much slower. And she says that, but she also doesn't really play. Well, she may have like one more clip from a different
There's a couple clips on it. They both sounded really good. I was like, wow, I need to listen to this.
But yeah, the album basically it has one ass-kicking barn burner for the lead track, and the rest of the album slows way down. It's not saying that it's bad, but it's a big tempo shift. They never pick up the pace on the rest of the songs. Anyway, getting back on track, what I was running off to grab real quick, you were talking about the whole Finnish tendency to evolve rapidly. They discuss that phenomenon a whole lot in the Finnish death metal book, Rotten Ways to Misery.
I need to pick that up. I have not. I totally forgot.
I had forgotten about it at first too, but I did pick it up earlier this year, and it's a good read. I've reviewed it over on my page if folks aren't familiar with it. But something they attribute that to with all those bands is the fact that so many of those guys were incredibly young when they started those bands. That they're like the 15 to 17 age bracket. And so what basically just happened was that, they were only starting to get into music, got into metal straight away, made a metal band, but they were still kind of discovering all these other types of music because they were still teenagers. And so they were, at the same time, they were recording their first couple of death metal demos. Somebody was like, hey, have you ever heard this band Genesis? Hey, you ever heard of Vandergraaf Generator? So they were rapidly absorbing all this new music like teenagers tend to do. And that played a big role in their sound changing so rapidly from album to album that by the time they got one album done, they were already listening to an entire different suite of artists and thinking, whoa, this stuff is really cool too. We want to do some of this. We don't want to just, and like teenagers tend to do, they rapidly move, from one thing to another. What's cool 6 months ago, they're not interested in anymore. So yeah, they kind of, quickly lost interest in just, the crazy brutality, and we're picking up, all these different influences and wanting to do that on the next album. And then the next album after that, the whole thing would start over again. They'd be into something else totally different.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very interesting kind of seeing that all, it makes sense when you stop and think about it. But yeah, it was neat kind of, seeing that actually, chronicled in the book that was put out on the scene.
Dwayne, I'm sorry. You're going to have to wait and hear how Alan finally clicked with Chameleon when we hit 5,000 subscribers.
Yes,
it'll be awakening for all to see. It'll be wonderful.
It'll be a Christmas miracle.
Okay.
for now, I guess we'll talk about how Alan learned to stop worrying and love the Eternal Idol. This is, one of those mid 80s Black Sabbath albums when most people stopped paying attention to Black Sabbath. And, when I worked my way through those, I liked a lot of them. Headless Cross, really good. Liked it a lot.
Tear, really good.
Tear, really good. Most of them, were quite good. This was the one I did not like, though.
Me too.
Yeah, and it was just like, played it on first person, like, that really just doesn't sound very good. It sounds kind of half-baked. Like, were these leftover songs? And, they famously had, some real lineup issues and personnel problems around this time. Tony was, kind of without a rudder. Who's going to sing in the band? Who's going to drum in the band?
Cocaine was his co-pilot.
Yeah, coke's a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
And obviously, the band had, the classic lineup, was, really had fallen all apart. Tony's kind of just scrambling around for kind of latching on to whoever was available. And, even, this particular, edition of the album, there's 2 versions of the album with 2 different vocalists basically doing most of the songs. I don't remember which version I heard first, but it didn't do anything for me. So yeah, for a long time, this was that one 80s Black Sabbath album that's just like, yeah, that one I'll pass on that one. Go ahead and give me Headless Cross or something instead. Some point here in the past couple of years, though, I went back and gave this one another chance. Not for the main reason was I found it really curious that they had the 2 different versions were finally in wider circulation on some pressings. I was like, I'm interested at least to hear what the other version sounds like. Maybe it was better with the other vocalist. So I ended up getting this where you had both versions, and it turns out they're both actually pretty good. I don't know if I have a strong favorite one way or the other, but like as I played it a few times, like actually, most of this fits in just fine with the other 80s Black Sabbath stuff from around this time. I don't know what I was hearing before, but yeah, I can dig it now. It just 80s Black Sabbath, and very few people are ever going to pick one of those as their favorite Sabbath album. They're good, but they're really not going to challenge the Dio albums, or the first 2 at least. They're not going to challenge many of the classic Ozzy albums. So it is very easy to sort of overlook and not revisit this stuff as often as maybe you should. But yeah, this one it finally clicked, and it was just a matter of wanting to hear if the second version was better than the first, and I ended up liking both versions equally. So have you come around on that one, Marty, or are you still not a fan?
When we did the dive with King, it was King.
Yes,
I ended up I bought that record from a record show cheap, long time ago, and was very unimpressed. But going back and listen to it again, I like it a bit more. I still prefer Headless Cross. I still prefer Tear. But
those I would probably still have those higher too. But yeah, this one I think this one's not that far off from those.
No, it's definitely not far off. Tony Martin, he's a very underrated singer for Sabbath. I mean, he did some great stuff with them. People just didn't want him there. It's kind of like Blaze Bayley and Maiden. But I think Martin did much better in Sabbath than Blaze did in Maiden. But
Tony's problem was nobody was paying attention to Black Sabbath when he was with them. Blaze's problem was that everybody was paying attention to Maiden when he was with them.
And he was about as far away from Bruce that you could. He wasn't even compatible with Diano. He was just kind of his own thing. And it just didn't. Whereas when they replaced Diano with Dickinson he could sing the Diano stuff and be fine. No problem. Blaze, I liked the first one. X Factor is a pretty good record. The second, it's rough. I don't know if that's necessarily his fault. I mean, Steve writes most of the songs, so I don't know. But yeah, he was given. They get a guy that has a certain range, and now he has to sing this operatic, Bruce Dickinson material. It killed him, man. It killed him on the road because you can't be Iron Maiden and go up there and not do those classics. You can't. You just can't. And if you got a guy that can't hack it, it's just going to shred him. And it did. It shredded him. It was not good. It wasn't a good fit. And it's not Blaze's fault. Blaze did a good job for being Blaze, you know.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yep. Lep says a good point here too. Yeah. Sometimes albums just completely get overlooked or kind of, you know, downplayed because they're living in the shadow of other albums.
Oh yeah.
That people love to death, and they just never want to come around on some of the other stuff. And Tony Martin Sabbath is probably a good example of that. You've got all those, you know, great albums from the 70s. You've got the 2 great albums from Dio. At that point, you've already got, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, you know, Black Sabbath albums. A lot of people at that point is like, why do I need to also check out these other albums that came out in the 80s that nobody ever listened to? It's unfortunate, but yeah, I understand why it happened.
And this is true. I mean, there's a couple of the Blaze tracks that Bruce actually struggles with, namely Sign. You know what? I like Bruce singing. When I saw him live, they did both of these songs. And it just shows that those songs were good. And they even like Man on the Edge. There's some songs off X Factor. They're great songs. They're great Maiden songs.
Mm-hmm.
It just isn't who you wanted singing them. And it's not fair to the guy that they hired. It's just not fair. But anyway. Sorry, we keep beating that horse over the head. Anyway, my turn?
It is your turn. I just did Black Sabbath. Eternal Idol, and now you're going to show...
Got to get the Halloween 5 degrees or 2 degrees separation of Halloween in here. The first Unisonic album.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
I was a bit disappointed when this came out. It wasn't because it was bad. It was a lot more AOR inspired than I thought it was going to be. You hear Kai Hansen and Michael Kiska are getting back together, and they're doing this project with members of Pink Cream 69. Great. I'm sign me up. And putting this on, it reminds me of Kiska's other project with the guys in this band called Palace Vendome. How do you say that? Palace Vendome, or I don't know.
Yes.
They did 4 or 5 records, and Kiska sounds great on it, but it's very mellow AOR influenced rock. There's an element of this on here. And I wanted Keepers 3. I did, and it's not fair. But, you know, my persistence to this is actually the second copy I had. My copy of the CD disappeared. I don't know what the fuck. I don't know how that happens, because no one I know would borrow it. I don't know what happened to it.
Are you sure TJ's not hoarding them?
Yeah, pretty sure. This is a 2 CD edition that I bought on eBay for cheap. And of course, it came all shipped. I had to re-glue this on. It's all ripped up. Shitty. It's all chewed to shit. But sorry, I'm still dealing with a cough. But I ended up really liking this record. It took me a while to get over the fact that it isn't as maybe aggressive. It doesn't have that underlying speed metal influence. The songs on here are really well written. Kiska sounds great. The guitar work's great. The songwriting's great. It's very much German hard rock, AOR, metal. Of course, the album they came out after this, Light of Dawn, I believe it's called.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been a contender for Keepers Part 3 if it wasn't for Land of the Free by Gamma Ray taking that spot. But anyway, I end up loving this band, and I end up really liking this CD. It's really solid. Just wasn't what I wanted. It just isn't what I anticipated it was going to be. Okay. Well, yeah. I don't know. They named a band, their band. It's basically Kiska and the Pink Cream 69 guys. There's 4 albums that I own. I think there's a 5th one. I never got it. They all have a Burning Eagle on it. It looks like a Primal Fear record, but it's very mellow. Just not great. I'll never get rid of them. I like the records. I just don't love them. Anyway, Alan.
All right. Well, seems like a good time to bring this one up since we were talking Maiden. I did not like Dance of Death when it came out.
I like that record.
I like it a lot now.
Passion Nail, great song.
There are lots of good songs on here. Rainmaker is really good. Wildest Dreams is good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When it came out, you know, we should not judge things by their covers, but let's face it, this is a pretty crappy cover.
Oh, it's terrible. What the hell?
And that kind of thing does have a bit of a psychological impact when you are buying or looking at albums. It just does. We should evolve past that or whatever, but having really lousy cover art does not help your case any. This Maiden cover, especially for a band like Maiden that's had so many iconic images associated with their albums, to put this on the front, it's just like, come on, guys, quality control much? But I liked the previous album, Brave New World. Bruce was back. I was cool with that.
Good record.
So I had no problem picking this up and when it came out, but it really fell flat on me. I played it a few times, just like it doesn't suck, but I don't hear anything. I don't need to keep this for any reason. I'm never going to. It was very much one of those cases. I don't think I'm ever going to play this again because none of these songs really do much for me. So yeah, I shipped it on down the line. Didn't really revisit it until we did the Iron Maiden deep dive, and then realized, wait, this one actually is pretty good.
It's like why Eyes Wide Shut meets Photoshop. Yeah. First version of Photoshop. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, replaying it when we went through the Iron Maiden discography, it was like, no, actually, this is a very good album. It's got highly energetic. The songs sound really upbeat. To me, it feels a little bit like the Victory Lap. The proof of concept. Was Brave New World. Can we make this? Can Bruce come back into the fold and everybody get their egos under control? Can we work with 3 guitarists without a hat sounding like a hot mess? Hey, yes, we can. And hey, everybody embraced it. Okay, yay. Now let's just go out and have fun. And it's a cool album for that. So, yep, good album. At the time, it just did not work for me at all. It wasn't, again, when I'm saying that, I'm not saying I thought it was bad or I hated it or anything. It's just, I played it a bunch of times and just, I had no real reaction to it, which is in some ways the worst reaction you can have to a record when you're playing it and just like, I don't know, whatever. If you at least dislike the album, there's probably at least certain things you're latching onto that you realize aren't working for you. When you've played it 5 times and you can't name a single song off the album, yeah, it's really not making any impression at all. So yeah, Dance of Death didn't work the first time around, but many years later, got another chance. And yep, now I think it's one of the better. For me, it's probably the last good Iron Maiden album to date. I don't mind some of the stuff here and there since then, but
yeah,
I don't know if there's any of the albums. I don't own any of the albums.
I like A Matter of Life and Death. It's long, but there's some good songs on it.
There are some good songs here and there on those albums. I would probably pick up a cheap used copy of A Matter of Life and Death if I saw it. But
after that, it gets rough.
Yeah, I certainly don't think I'd pick up any of the ones after that. Well, actually, yeah, some of them I've seen lately, and a lot of copies of Senjutsu have been showing up used around these parts already. I'm just like, no thanks, don't need to do that one.
I just have to take a second here to comment on this comment here by our friend Aaron, the Metal Theologian. Life is too short for bad covers. Now, this is everybody. If you're not familiar with the Metal Theologian, please go subscribe to his channel. Awesome, great, love watching all of his stuff. Total respect for the guy, friend. But this is a guy that doesn't get rid of bad records and enjoys listening to bad metal records. Just saying. So this comment seemed a little funny to me. But anyway, right on. Okay, next for me. Century Media seems to be getting a lot of, and is about to get a lot of coverage here. But Morgoth, Feel Sorry for the Fanatic. This record came out. This is a promo, obviously. I never got a full version. I will eventually because I end up loving this record. But man, when it came out, this band started off really brutal, kind of death. The band inspired German death metal. Cursed was a little bit more refined, and their album Odium, even more so refined, with a little bit of a electronic thing that kicked in once in a while. But it was still straight up death metal, very polished, kind of forward-thinking death metal. They were going in a cool direction. When this came out, it sounds like Killing Joke, like a cast off Killing Joke record, kind of. Not very. There's no metal on it at all. Mark Grieva, his vocal style abandoned the death metal snarl, the evil Chuck style of death metal vocals that he had, to just straight up clean singing. There's no growls on this at all. And I hated it initially. I'm like, what the hell happened to this band? Century Media, curse you for, commercializing all the bands I love. But again, earworm, well written, catchy. It's got electronic vibe to it. It's got a gothic vibe to it. I end up liking it a lot, and it didn't take long for me to come around on this one. It's got a stupid clown. The cover on it's so stupid. It's so dumb.
Everything about that cover is horrible.
It's horrible. Everything.
The color is
scheme,
horrible. The font is horrible.
Everything.
And the clown.
Yeah, it's terrible. But the album, if you're into Killing Joke and stuff like that, I dig it. I don't care. Whatever. I dig it. Another cover with a clowner gesture. I know.
I'm going to say this as somebody who showed a copy of the first Acid Bath earlier. Clowns have no places on the cover of metal albums.
Right.
You got to work really hard for that not to just be a complete disaster.
Especially a clown that was drawn by a guy that killed other people's kids. I've said it on here before. I struggle with the serial killer fascination that people have. I think it's why glorify these people, these broken fucking pieces of society that have taken lives of somebody's. I don't know. I struggle with it. I don't like macabre because of it, and other reasons, but I don't get it. Anyway, that's a side rant. Sorry.
Yeah, it was never a topic I ever got really deep into either. Just like, okay, they're a jerk and a terrible person, and they were caught and killed. End of story. I don't need all the details of their life. Not for me.
Hey Glenn, I like the wicked clowns. Whoop whoop. Yeah, Michigan represent in saying clown posse. Anyway,
I rest my case.
Yeah. Right on.
All right. Here's one that took me a little while to figure this one out, and this was another one where people were telling me it was very good, and for some reason I was just very resistant to it. It was Agalak, second one. The deal with this one, I had completely missed Pale Folklore when it came out. I don't know what I was doing, but it came out and I was over here looking at other things, so no knowledge of it. And the next thing I know, this album came out and everybody and their mother was just ranting and raving about it and just foaming at the mouth, how amazing it was and how special and how it was changing their lives. And the crippled people could walk now and the blind could see. And I'm just like, wait, are y'all talking about that stupid gray record with the big deer on it? And it's just like, huh? What? Really? That's life affirming for you? Okay. And at that point, I hadn't really even heard it. I had seen it and I'm just like, okay, it's a gray cover with a big deer on the front. This is a thing? Really? And so it was almost like I didn't even want to hear it, but it was kind of what you said before, Marty, that sometimes, the more people hype things up, the more you kind of just want to distance yourselves from them. It's really how I felt about this, when it was released. It's just like, people have to be overhyping this. There is no way the album is that good. I'm sorry, but I just don't believe the testimonials of barren women going into putting on a pair of headphones and 9 months later they are now one with child after the miracle
triplets
healing that this album has. It's just like, it was just nuts how people were just fawning over this album so much. Deer, fawn, see what I did there?
Nailed it.
Yeah. Someone got it. Tom's watching. Tom got it. So I don't even remember. Did I pick this one up first? I think I eventually got a used copy of it just to see what the hubbub was about, and I didn't expect much out of it. First couple of times I played it, I was like, well, okay, it doesn't stink. It's not horrible. I'm not expecting it to come out of it and suddenly have 20/20 vision and be, quarterback of the football team and be dating the head cheerleader like all these other people are. But at the same time, it's like, I really don't get what everybody's going on about. It's like, it didn't stink. Seems kind of okay. It's different. I guess it's kind of interesting. Maybe. So, but I kept it, it was another, it's like, I'll put it in the car CD player. I'll give it, a week of, commuting back and forth. And, it did grow on me over that week. It's like, okay, this is actually a really cool album. And I do like it. I like basically the first 4 albums. I enjoy all of them quite a bit. I don't play them that often these days. But yeah, I did figure, I was like, okay, yes, this is a very, very good album. They were doing something that, for most people, it was their first exposure to something like this. And so, yeah, now I kind of get why everybody was geeking out over it. I don't have it on that same pedestal of, top 10 albums of all time that a lot of people might have with the mantle. But yeah, I can see why maybe other people do. But yeah, my first impression very much was just colored by people having such strong reactions to it. I'm just like, it's called The Mantle. It's gray and it's got a deer on the cover. How good can it be? Kind of a dumb take, but it was something between everybody hyping it and just this kind of a very simple presentation. I just didn't. I didn't want to kind of see what the hype was about. But it is, strong album. Lots of rumblings about the band now doing something new. And we talked about Hunter from Radical Research earlier. He's been drumming live with them recently, if folks didn't know. He says it's been an amazing experience. I chatted with him very briefly on email a couple of weeks ago about it. And yeah, hopefully that continues to go well. Maybe he can do some more work with the band. That'd be awesome.
Parker, why are you watching this? Walker Parker is my son, everybody. Say hi to Parker. Hey, everybody. Hey, Parker.
Hey, Parker. How are we doing?
I got to say that Mantle album, I struggle with it too. I really like Pale Folklore a lot. And when that came out, I mean, look at the cover. Listen to the acoustic guitar and stuff in there. You could tell they've been listening to a lot of Death in June, which I enjoy some Death in June. And metal bands trying to infuse non-metal influences in, sometimes it's a rocky transition. And I think they did a fairly good job. It ended up growing on me. It took a minute. It just seemed a little lethargic to me, I guess. But I mean, I end up liking the record. I mean, I too, people praise something, I want to go the other way. I'm like, it can't be that good. Everybody likes it. It must suck. But anyway.
Yeah, I was very much of that mindset with the Mantle. Just, yeah. And the thing, I guess, too, that irked me about it, while everybody was, glorifying so much, nobody ever really described to me what it sounded like. I'm like, okay, I was like, this is the best album. I was like, great. What does it sound like? Oh, I can't really describe it, man. I was like, is it black metal, power metal, folk, death black? Give me some adjectives, a sense of what it was. Because again, this was what, a 2002 release, 2003? When did Mantle come out? Let's see if it's printed on the back. Oh, of course not. It's in the End Records printing. They don't put anything on the back.
Well, it's got to be late. Hold on. I can look it up real quick.
It's got to be, I'm thinking 2000. I'm going to say 2002 or 2003. But yeah, let's
early
check
2000s.
before I say something dumb.
The Mantle 2002.
Okay, yeah. This is it's either pre-YouTube or very early YouTube. 2002. Yeah, if YouTube was being used, it wasn't for a whole lot at that point. So it wasn't like, my point being, I couldn't easily hop on something like YouTube at the time and immediately hear what it sounded like for myself. And so I'm like asking people on, discussion forums, what is this out? Okay, you're building many temples in other countries, in the glory of this album. What's it sound like? And I never got a really good answer. So that was another thing that bugged me about it. It's like, I don't know what it sounds like, and nobody seems to be able to describe it. It's apparently like wiping their brain clean of any sonic memory or imprint. It just drove me a little nuts. But I've ranted about it enough.
Right on. It grew on me. It's good. You're right. It's a good record. It just at
Yeah.
the time it just seemed I knew what they were going for, and I liked what the source material they were drawing from more so than their take on it. But I ended up getting it, and I ended up liking it. So
that's what I was thinking. Pretext 2005 was about the first time I was aware of YouTube, but I'm not always on the cutting edge of those kind of things when they pop up. So it could have been earlier and I would have known. But yeah, 2005 makes sense to me. Thanks for clarifying, Pretext.
Aaron, he does play that game. Isn't that weird gory cartoon game? That Isaac game. Anyway, he plays that quite a bit actually. Anyway, sorry. Next up for me, another Century Media band that Alan showed them earlier tonight, and I loved Worship Him. I loved Ceremony of Opposites. I'm sorry, Ceremony of Opposites. What's the one? Blood Ritual. Couldn't remember it for some reason. Rebellion was a sign of what was to come, and I was on board with it. It sounds more produced. Okay, whatever. But when your drummer says, "Hey guys," it happened in Manila Road too. "Hey guys, I'm going to quit playing drums, which I'm completely proficient at, and add a lot to the band, and I'm going to program the drums and do percussion." You take your drummer, even though he's your brother, and you pile drive him in the nuts. That's just what you do. And but in this, because of it, this Samael Passage record, it's just very synthetic, very clean, very cold. I end up liking it. It just took a minute to, like why did they do this? Why are they going this route when your drummer is still in the band? If you lose your drummer, great. You're, some forlorn teenager in your grandmother's basement writing black metal with a drum machine that Aaron loves, then great. But when you're a big band on a big label doing drum machine stuff, I just didn't get it. I grew on me. I do like this record. I end up loving it quite a bit, but it isn't Ceremony of Opposites. It wasn't Blood Ritual. That is the heyday of this band for me. I do appreciate this band's evolution and forward thinking mentality to their art, and they're still doing it. So cheers to them. But I end up liking it. But again, I question their choices.
No, I understand. I had a similar reaction. And that album has never fully grown on me. I love the opening track, Rain. That one, I think, has a real good intensity to it, sets a good tone. And the rest of the album just, it just kind of keeps going. It goes on, and none of those other songs have ever really registered. I like some of their later albums. It's not that the style doesn't appeal to me. I think Eternal's a really good album. Solar Soul's got some good stuff on it too. It's not a style I listen to very much, but yeah, Passage, was definitely, I was in that same boat. I've heard, Ceremony and others and liked them, and oof, this is going maybe a bridge too far.
Aaron, you've got 1,500 hours in the Binding of Isaac. Oh my God, dude. Every time I sit down and Parker's playing them, like, you haven't won this yet? No, not yet. It goes on for quite a while. Apparently it does. Wow. 1,500 hours. Wow. It's a weird, screwed up, gross video game. My kid probably shouldn't be playing it, but whatever.
I've heard of it, but yeah, I know it by reputation. The number sounds huge, but if they had a clock that logged how many hours I played Legend of Zelda back in the day, I won't talk about that.
Right.
All right. Yes. Next up for me, band came to love this album, but again, it wasn't that I disliked it at first, but the first impression was just, again, very head scratchy. It's like, I'm not sure what's going on here. It was Caius. Some people call it the self-titled, others will call it Welcome to Sky Valley.
Dude,
I've always called it Welcome to Sky Valley.
Not a bad riff on that record. It's a golden riff album. It really is.
Yes, it's a great album. It's heavy, it's groovy, it's just got a really cool flavor to it. it was just, I had never heard anything similar to it. And there's not a ton of stuff similar to it, I guess, as you move over more into some of the stoner, maybe desert stuff. But yeah, I had no real experience with that scene prior to hearing Caius. So I heard it was like, oh, what was that? Yeah, and it didn't help. This one again. It's sometimes a little hard to tell where some songs are starting and ending. It's the kind of on the things can kind of start to run together if you're not paying real close attention, or until you get to know the album. So I played it through and just like, am I on track 2? I'm trying to figure out. I was like, no, I think I'm like on track 5. When did that happen? What do I do here? But yeah, a few more spins of this one was all it really took for it to really start to lock in. And I've liked the album, a lot ever since. This one and Blues for the Red Sun, definitely the 2 Caius albums for me. I've only heard the first one a couple of times, and it's never done much for me. And then the last one, And the Circus Leaves Town, the wheels were already apparently coming off, the Green Machine by that point. There's still some good music on there, but you can tell it doesn't quite have the same magic as the previous 2 albums. So yeah, big kind of what the heck was that album the first time I heard it. Quickly got into it though. This one was not a hard one. It was not a labor to get into. Caius, good stuff.
Yeah. All right. This was an album that I got a little bit of disappointment with when I got the promo. Massive Killing Capacity by Dismember. I like it now, but they too followed, even though it seemed like the media was, and people are always trying to compare, Dismember and Entomb, they sound like each other. They don't. They both have the HM2 sound, but Dismember had more of a bite to them, more of an evil bite to their songwriting. They stayed the course their entire career. This is the only album where they actually started to follow Entomb down that groovy road, which a lot of the Swedes did. Desultory did it. That Swallow the Snake album sucked. I mean, there's a lot of bands that Grave did it. Yep. Soulless, I love that record, but the one after it, Hating Life, they went down this road. I mean, a lot of the big bands tried to follow Entombed into the rock and roll groove stuff. Once I got over the fact that that's what they did here, it's still a Dismember record. I don't like the production still, but it's a good album. There's some good songs on here. It grew on me, but I was a little bummed. The one after this, they end up, going back to their evil, nasty, ripping death metal style. So it was just a skip in the road, but I end up liking it. It's good. Didn't love it though initially.
Yeah, that seems to be the one album most people cite as like, and then there's that one.
Yeah. Yep. All right.
Here's a more recent band that I would hear people mention this band, and I'd stumble across them on YouTube, play it for a bit, and just be like, no, I don't think so. It's kind of like it was the very kind of like you're going to go with the very gradual thumbs down and move on to the next thing. But it kept popping up in the feed for whatever reasons, and people kept talking about them. So I'm like, yeah, okay, every 3 months or so it would turn back up. It's like, oh, try it again, and finally it did click. But yeah, those first listens of Ruins of Bevrast did not do much for me.
That record rules. Oh my god.
And yeah, it was always this album that was popping up. And just, for whatever reason, and I can't really say, it wasn't that there was anything sticking out as bad or annoying me about it. It wasn't like there was a production problem or I didn't like the vocals. There was no single thing. It was just like, I'd put it on, listen to it some and be like, nah. It's just all there was. Even at some point, somebody like, I don't even remember what the exchange was. Somebody, had, told me, like, oh, you really should check out this band. I was like, okay, I'll go check them out. And I typed it into YouTube and this came up. And it's just like, I'm looking at it like, I think I've heard that before. Wait, Like, oh, it's that band. I played that thing 6 months ago. I didn't like it. Well, okay, let's try it again. It eventually stuck. And yes, once it stuck, it was just like, oh, holy shit, this is really, really, really good. And I'm going to chalk this one up to I probably just wasn't paying enough attention while I listened to it. I am prone, especially with YouTube listening, to put something on and immediately get distracted with grading papers, writing an exam, working on lecture slides.
It's not
I'm
wallpaper. It's not wallpaper music.
And something like this is definitely, yes, it's not meant to be, just background music while you're really focused on something else. So I'm chalking that one up to, just me not paying attention when I should have been focused and paying attention to it. But the band's obviously done a ton of cool albums throughout their career. Once this one clicked, and I had a chance to spin it a lot, I started working through some of the rest of their catalog. And it's like, oh, that one's really good too. Oh, this one's also pretty amazing. So I like the band quite a bit now. But it was funny. Those first couple of times, it was never that it was awful. It was just these sort of, I don't think it was never quite getting over the hump. But I think, it's fair to just chalk that up to inattention.
Yep.
And it is something I've always been bad to do that. Some music. Oh, hey, I want to read this book. Let's put on some music. Oh, let's check the football score. I that is a fault of mine that I've tried to get better at, and be like, let's just sit and listen to the album, and this other stuff can wait, and I'll do that later. What do you know? It makes the difference.
It does. Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. Took me a minute took me a couple of tries to get into Ruins of Bevarest.
Okay. I don't know if there's many fans of this band watching this, but maybe. I struggled with this album, and this is a twofer, by the way. Godflesh Street Cleaner. When this came out, I picked it up. I'm into industrial music. I have dabbled in some noise over the years. It's not at the forefront of my listening experience. I prefer dark ambient, but Street Cleaner. This to me initially struck me as maybe 5 songs and a whole bunch of filler. You got Like Rats, Christbait Rising. Of course, the 2 best songs they put at the beginning of this album. This has got 4 bonus tracks on here. Tiny Tears Wound, Deadhead, Suction. This took a lot for me to get. I like the songs I liked on here. The rest of it, just annoying, noisy filler to me. But it took me a lot of trying and this is an album I got to be in the mood for. In a band, I got to be in the mood for. I really like the one that came before this. It's self-titled. I love that record. The Selfless, the album, couple albums later, Selfless. I love that record. Minimal, repetitive, catchy as hell. Really good. This one I end up really liking. It's not as much as the first one, not as much as Selfless, but it's really good. It's twisted. It's nightmarish. It's good, solid, interesting for the time that this came out. Pretty groundbreaking record. A little bit later on, Slave State. This album is pretty much dancey. They went from the nightmarish and embraced the EDM side of their sound on this one. And I hated it when this came out. I ended up getting it used at some point. Didn't like it, and it wasn't until probably the last couple years that I put it on again, just for shits and giggles, and went, oh, I kind of like this. Godflesh that makes my ass move. That's all right. That's all right. Now I get it. I like it now, but man, when it came out, I just wasn't feeling it. Too dancey. Felt silly to me, especially when you're getting out of this dark, nasty, twisted stuff. But I ended up liking it. I hated it initially. Like it now. That's the whole point of this. All right. Yeah. I finally completed I've got all their records. Nope. There's one more I'm missing. And we're eventually going to have a dive of them on here. Supposedly with Matt. We'll see if his tech issues get worked out. If not, it'll be with somebody else. But
he'll get it fixed and
we'll get it figured out. Yeah.
Let's see. I've got 3 more, Marty. How are you doing?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more.
All right, I'm down to 3.
I can start doubling them up.
Sure, that'll work. All right, so some people will be aghast at this one, but it just didn't click for early listens at all. Killing is my business, and this album was not my business for the first bunch of times I heard it. And I think this was a case too of hearing them out of order. I already knew Peace Sells and liked it a bunch. I already had dealt with So Far So Good So What, which we've talked about that album a lot before. It has its ups and downs, and a lot of both, maybe. I probably heard this before Rust in Peace came out. I can't swear to that. So
you had to have. I would imagine you've heard that.
I'd probably had heard at least part of it. I don't know if I'd heard the whole album, but I had probably heard at least some of the tracks. The bottom line was, though, I was working backwards to get to this one. And this album, yes, well, now it's like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of, crazy good musicianship and, some really good songs. It's also, though, an album that feels still to this day to me feels kind of thrown together. It's Dave in a big hurry to make a big splash and prove, that his penis is just as big as the Metallica penis. He's out to prove something, but he's trying to do it too quickly. And so, production on the album has always been a bit wanting. And the songs just have like kind of a very, loose, kind of frantic sound to them. It really, sometimes it just feels like it's not that tight, which again, coming into thrash, in the later part of the 80s, thrash was very tight then. You had all the palm muted chugs and everything, very regimented. This album's not like this. This album is a lot looser sounding. And that's what gave me trouble with it, was just like, it always kind of felt, the analogy for me was always like, it feels like they're trying to go 95 miles an hour and they're about to just literally veer right off the cliff. And that they're just, I'm not even sure they're holding it in the road here, that they're just kind of all over. And when you line that up against, other, big thrash albums from the day, they didn't really do that kind of thing. And so this album just didn't seem to fit with the rest of the catalog for me. So since then, yeah, sure. I've warmed up to the album a lot. When we covered Megadeth with Darcy and, I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting who the second guest was that evening. But, I had this, I just have it like, it's, top 5 Megadeth. I don't think I had it top 3. It may have been just outside the top 3 Megadeth.
It wasn't Melanie. I know she hates them. So it was Darcy.
No, it was not Melanie. I'm just drawing a complete blank. It's been a while since we did it.
Did we cover Megadeth? Because I don't remember listening to Risk.
You weren't. It was me and Darcy and someone else. It wasn't you.
Ah, yeah.
Yep. It may have been the last summer's camp weekend for you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But yeah, regardless, good album. I can appreciate it now. But yeah, early on when I first heard it, it sounded like a bunch of, demos.
Metal Mickey?
Might have been. Apologies to whoever it is that I'm completely brain fried.
We do this weekly. It all blurs together.
And we've done it for 129 weeks. So we are at the point where it's getting a little hard to remember who did what. I will check to make sure that person gets credit while Marty shows his next one. But I am now ready to do business with Killing Is My Business. But for a while there, the shop was closed and it just wasn't for me.
Listen to that album and pay attention to the drums.
Mm-hmm.
Gar's drum performance on there and the drum production, the drums are really up front. God, he just crushes on that record. Mm-hmm. His fills are just so fluid and great. I love that record. I love it. Great record. I like it better than Peace Sells, and I love Peace Sells. Rust in Peace is still my favorite. But anyway,
I'll still take Peace Sells over it. But I'm guessing I had it third at that point behind Rust and Peace. Rust and Peace. There's a comma in there somewhere.
Rust
yeah,
in peace.
Let me look up who I did that, because I feel bad that I'm not giving them credit while you go ahead and do your next one. Or again, go ahead and double up a couple if you want to, Marty.
All right. Another Century Media. Imagine that. The Gathering, Mandelion. When I got this, I'm really picky with lady vocals. I just am. It's gotten better over the years, but when this came out, didn't know what to think. It was a bit tough to. It still had a metal undercurrent to it, but it had more of a heavy alternative. I don't know. It's hard to put my finger on this record, but her voice, I'm like, oh, she's out of tune. She's out of key. But the more I spun it and listened to it, her voice made me feel funny where my bathing suit covers. And I was just absolutely enchanted by her voice. And there just seemed like so much light and life coming out of it. Is very, very impressive. The 2 albums that came out after this, wow, the band progressed a lot. It all came together really well. I love that stuff. This album took me a minute, but it's compared to the 2 that came after it, this is almost their punk album. It just has a rawness to it. It's well produced, don't get me wrong, but there's just a live rawness to this record. Yeah, The Gathering, a definite fave. Annika's vocals are great. Love it. She is the light and spirit of this band while she was in the band. They end up getting another person singing for them afterwards. I did not follow after Annika left. So it might be great. I don't know. Haven't heard it. What did you think of that record when it dropped?
I did not hear Mandelion when it came out. So yeah, it was another one where very out of order. I think the first one I heard from them was Nighttime Birds, which I liked a lot.
That's a great. I'll do another one while we're here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here's another band that the first 4 albums sound nothing alike. Swedish band, Cemetery. This is Godless Beauty. I was expecting An Evil Shade of Grey Part 2.
Oh, you were disappointed then.
This record was kind of wackadoodle to that. And the cover, obviously the logo's gone. You got the cover's weird. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things like, what the hell's going on here? And instead of death metal, this is more of a thrashy album. Vocals they're more yelled than death metal croaks. Mm-hmm. I end up really liking this record. It just took me a minute to wrap my head around it. I even like the stuff that came out after this. So the 2 albums that came out after were also transitional records, but I liked them. They got more gothy as they went. This is just a weird, very weird thrashy album with Swedish death metal melodies and a very I don't want to say suffocating production. Everything can be heard. There just isn't a lot of depth or distortion to it. It's weird. It's a weird production. I like it. It's good. Initially, kind of off-putting for sure.
Yep. Yeah, I like all those early Cemetery albums, but yeah, they are very, very different from each other until they finally with it's the third one, Black Vanity, I think, is where they kind of really found their formula that worked for them. All right, let's see. Next up, here's a case one that it just slipped through the cracks. Obituaries, Slowly We Rot. For some reason, no one really picked up on this band in my circles when this came out. We were maybe a hair young. We were just getting into heavy-ish stuff, and so nobody picked this up right away. And so when we finally did hear it, this was a case like, one you mentioned earlier, Marty, where it's just like, that is just a little bit... that's a little too crazy for me right now. With everybody, of course, was freaking out about John Tardy's vocals and just this kind of non-verbal vomit kind of sound coming out of him, and it's just like, it wasn't that I hated it. I didn't think it was like, "Ew, that's terrible." It's just like, no, that's not for me. That's not the direction I'm ready to go in right now. So circled back to Obituary, and somehow I ended up missing Cause of Death completely when it came out. So it was Incomplete was the first Obituary album I actually bought. And then had to, catch up on some things. So yeah, like this one, plenty fine, once I got, more acquainted with death metal overall, but wasn't ready to hear this, early on. And then also by the time I'm checking out other Obituary albums, it didn't really click heavily at first because, again, by late 93, early 94, I kind of had enough death metal. It's like, thank you, don't need a whole lot more. Yeah, I would still pick stuff up. It was the only stuff you could find in record stores where I was at. It's like, any new metal show up? Well, there's a used Malevolent Creation CD over there. We got some 6 Feet Under. It's like, yay. Well, I don't know. Give me the Malevolent Creation, I guess. It was all running together pretty bad. But yeah, obviously, fun album. I like it. I know it's not. Most people pick Cause of Death over this one, and I get why. But I do like this one a lot these days. It just wasn't an album I was ready to hear back then when I was getting into heavier stuff at that point in the earliest 90s.
I prefer Cause of Death as well. It just seems more
thought
out together.
I mean, it is.
Yeah. And the fact that I like his vocals are sick and killer, but the fact that he didn't write any lyrics is lazy. It's lazy. You have one job you're a singer in the band. You're one job. You write the goddamn
one job,
lyrics.
John.
Yeah,
one job.
Yeah, you're puking your guts out. That's a big part of it, but sing something. Don't just go scat through it. It's stupid. Anyway, I always thought that was lazy. But okay. I'm up.
Go ahead. Yep. I've got one left. So if you want to rattle off a couple, go right ahead.
All right. Gorguts, Obscura. This album was just too much to take.
Yeah.
It was. I'm a big fan of Considered Dead, Erosion of Sanity. When this thing hit, it's still. I got to be in the mood for this. It's tough. There's so much going on. It's so complex and jarring and disjointed, and kudos. It keeps me interested, and I've seen them on this tour 3 times live. It's amazing, absolutely amazing, and I think live helped me process it a bit more. But seeing this live and sitting home and trying to wrap my head around this stuff at the time when it hit, I wanted more of the old school. This is way more. I don't want to call it progressive. It's just weird, complex, alienating in a lot of ways. I end up liking it, but it isn't the first one I reach for in Gorguts' catalog, but I do really enjoy this record. It's a lot to process, a lot of riffs, a lot of weird turns. Speaking of weird turns, Arcturus, Aspira, Hemes, Sophina.
Folks were talking about them in the chat earlier. Yep.
The second album, La Masquerade Infernale, that record is such a mess. I know people that love that record.
Oh yeah.
And other than the song The Chaos Path, where Simon Hastis or ICS Vortex, his premiere into the Arcturus sphere, that song rules. The rest of the record is a circus freak mess. This record, you put it up against what was going on in Norway at the time. It was different, weird, little proggy. But the songs are catchy. They don't go so far off the beaten path that they lose you along the way. So it just took me a while to get through to the sound. And Arcturus. This is probably my favorite by them, to be honest. But Arcturian is pretty good too. Their last one, pretty good record. But I like all of them for little bits and pieces, but that's about it.
Yep, good calls on those. Yeah, with Obscura, it's like, okay, clear my calendar, lock the door, get comfy, roll up the sleeves. This is going to be some work.
What's up, TJ? How's it going, brother? All right.
Oh, okay, by the way, Marty wants his Unisonic CD back.
Yep.
Yep. All right. My last one for the night. This one had a very specific problem that none of the others I've shown tonight did. That kept me from getting into it for a while. It is the first Arch Matheos album.
I love that record.
Resonance. I like it a lot now too, but the first couple of times I tried to listen to it, it would not work for me whatsoever.
Better than the second one. The second one is a little too complex at times. Anyway, go ahead.
And it's actually funny because the second one I had no trouble getting into. I mean, it still took several plays to fully start to wrap my head around it, but I was into the second album from the get-go. This album, I was like, okay, definitely want to hear what this sounds like. Play. And it was literally, I could feel my brain smacking into a brick wall. I'm just like, I get like, song 2 or 3, I'm just like, just stop. Hit the stop button. Walk away. Don't make eye contact. Let's go. Where's that Obituary album? Let's just listen to something real simple here.
Knuckle dragging. Yeah.
Me no smart enough to listen to this thing. No, I could not. I really had trouble getting through the album. Finally figured out, what it was. And again, it was one of those cases of, okay, got to sit down here, get the glasses on and the magnifying glass out and the headphones plugged in and make sure the kid's in bed and the cats are fed and all that stuff. The thing that was killing me on this album turned out to be the first track. The first track is relatively long. It's 11 minutes, 12 seconds, and is one of the more complex songs on the album. And just trying to process an opening 11-minute track was using up all of my processing speed, so that by the time I got to track 2, I was already exhausted. So what I started doing was just like, you know what? Fuck track 1. Let's start this on track 2. Just like, insert disc, push over to track 2, start CD there. The rest of the album, no problems whatsoever. It's like, okay, yes, that song's good. Everything started to come together very quickly as soon as I learned to skip track 1. Once I had a handle on the rest of the album, then it was like, okay, now let's go back and play that first track. And it started to, make a little more sense. It's still probably my least favorite track on the album just because it is, I now have, this kind of, a little bit of a stigma against the song because of that. But I can play it through now, and it doesn't give me a migraine anymore. But yeah, that was the issue here. I mean, I knew, I really liked, obviously their work together, both incredibly talented. This is one I kept going back to it because it's just like, it's got to be good. It just kind of has to. But yeah, it was just like smack, smack, smack. Could not penetrate this album. Boys and girls, the take-home story here is that if you start a band, don't open your album with an 11-minute song that's very, very dense.
Neurotically Wired rules, though. It's a great song.
It is. Again, I have come to appreciate even that song, but it is I don't know why they felt it should be the album opener. They're geniuses, I listen to Venom and new wave of British heavy metal singles. I'm not in their league, but I disagree strongly with the concept of putting this very long, very technical song as the lead off track.
Maybe close with it.
I put it on track like 6 or 7, and yes, because everything else on the album, it's still good, it's still technical, it still shows them great songwriting and musicianship and execution. But it's in more digestible chunks for sure. Starting the album this way was, it was a tough sell for me, but I stuck with it. And yes, like the album now, I just don't agree with the way the tracks are ordered on the album.
TJ, we should cover that on a Wednesday album night. That'd be a fun one. Something a little different. Anyway, good pick. Absolutely great album. Are you done, Alan?
I am done. That was the last one I have pulled. So if you got a few to wrap up with here, by all means, take it away.
All right. This one again, since I've cast aside my distaste for cheese and say, you know what, I do like get waddling up on Velveeta Mountain once in a while. Life has gotten more fun when it comes to this popular cheesy European power metal stuff. There's some of the bands that aren't cheesy. There's some bands that lean into it. This band is embarrassingly cheesy. This is Legends from Beyond the Galactic Terror Vortex by Gloryhammer. The reason why that this entered into my sphere is because my kid ended up liking it. And believe me, my son is 13 years old. I remember taking him to school and to the bus and sitting with him, listening to Kids Bop on Sirius XM, which is younger kids singing the pop hits of the time. I was thinking to myself, oh boy, this is bad. This is real bad. It can only get worse from here. But he started, now he's like, he's total metalhead now. So it's cool. And it's thanks to stuff like this. It's super cheesy. I hated it initially, but man, it's so catchy. It is so, every song on here is catchy. You've got, and if you can get past song titles like Hoots Force, Legendary Enchanted Jetpack, oh man, there's so much stuff. There's stuff about unicorns on here. It is so stupid. It is bad, so bad. It is, but it's so catchy. It's so heavy. I see why it's popular. It's an every song's an earworm, and it's metal. My kid digs it. Right on. This band, I had the Barry White album that all metalheads have. I had October Rust. I always thought that was a good record. This record I hated. And then I read Jeff's book, Jeff Wagner's book, Souls at Zero.
Souls on Fire.
Souls on Fire. Sorry.
Or Soul on Fire.
Soul on Fire. And was completely, that book, even if you're not a Typo Negative fan, is such an interesting read. I ended up,
that's me. I bought and read the book, and I've never been that into Typo.
No, I had October Rust. I think it's a great record. You have a very unique sound. I loved Carnivore. Love Carnivore. Retaliation, one of my favorite crossover albums for sure. Reading that book at the end of it, when I put it down, I'm like, okay, I need to listen to Typo Negative. I end up buying all their shit, all their stuff. And this album still has some bad songs on it, and Slow, Deep, and Hard has some bad songs on it. But as they went on, they got really good. Life is Killing Me, World Coming Down. I mean, they're great, heavy, dark, twisted, agonizing records. Very good. I ended up really liking this band, even though I didn't want to. Here's another one. Glenn, I ended up liking Bloody Kisses, but it took me reading a book, and this one, this is the last one for tonight for me. Sorry, my cough is acting up. I have stuck with this band. They're the first band I showed tonight, and they're probably one of the biggest culprits for getting me into heavier music. It's Metallica. I'm always going to give this band a chance. Always. Even though I know it's never going to be great. I'm always going to, we covered the new one on Album Club. I haven't bought it yet. The albums usually end up entering my collection, whether I listen to them or not. I've got Load. I've got Reload. It's bad. They're not good. If they were any other band named something other than Metallica, they'd been good rock records. But this record, I initially didn't care for. I ended up listening to it a bunch because I always try to give them a chance. It clicked with me. It's a bit long, but the riffs, there's some really great riffs on here. Out of the post first 4 records, this is probably my favorite of the bunch. It's the one after this. What the hell? What's the hell? Hardwired. Half of that album is good. The other half is just garbage, filler, junk. This is pretty solid. There's no song on here I dislike. There's some of the songwriting gets a little long-winded at times. They could have cut a couple songs off. It'd have been fine, but solid record. Yep, and we're never going to get that record, TJ. We all know it. It's just the way it is. They're old and they're still trying. They're still writing records, which I applaud them for. They don't have to. They certainly don't have to. But yep, Death Magnetic. I end up liking it. I still pull this out on occasion and spin it. It's fun. It's good. It's the last Metallica record that I really want to listen to. It's weird. But yeah, that's it. We did okay without Matt. We did just fine.
We got through. Yep.
We made it. Yep.
Matt's microphone wasn't cooperating tonight, but again, we'll get him back on for another topic in the near future.
For sure.
Yeah. Thank you again to everybody in the chat for hanging out. It's been a lot of people. It's still an awful lot of people. But yeah, there's been lots of good commentary there. Lots of good examples from folks as well. Because this happens to all of us. If you listen to a style of music for any length of time, there's going to be things that, they just don't click with you the first time you hear them. And if you give them another chance, some of them will. It's as simple as that. We've talked about different reasons they will, different reasons that you might kind of have a misfire the first time around with them. It's absolutely unavoidable when you stick to a style of music for a long time. Something we all go through, but hey, it's sometimes fun to go back and play those albums and be pleasantly surprised and realize like, oh, okay, yeah, I do get it now. I just wasn't paying attention or I just wasn't in the mood for that style. But now that I am, this is actually a really cool album that's been sitting here on the shelf all this time. It's something I try to remember too, and I'm not always good at this. As metalheads, we always have this tendency to want to, get more stuff. Oh, I need to order something else. Oh, I got to go out and get the new album from so-and-so. Oh, I want to go to the record show and see if I can find some old stuff. We all have a ton of stuff behind us and on our hard drives, and we don't always revisit that often. And we don't have to go out and, spend money to hear something new. I've got plenty of stuff around here that I haven't played in forever. I could go back and play some of it and probably find some cool music that I've overlooked all this time because it didn't make a big impression on me at first. Next time I get around to playing it, I'm probably going to be like, damn, this has been sitting here for 5 years and I didn't realize it was this good. So if you're feeling like you need something new, especially heading into the holiday season when money is tight for everybody and stuff, look around you. You've got some albums that might be better than you realized. Pull them back off the shelf. Give them a second chance. Yep,
absolutely. And I got to say, since we started doing this channel, it's gotten me back in touch with my collection. I mean, I'm digging through it weekly now, and it's cool to be refamiliarized, or we have a guest on or a topic to revisit a bunch of stuff I haven't listened to in decades. It's cool. It's a lot of fun. Keeps me going for sure. And of course, all you fine folks that join us every week. Hell, we had like 105 people at one point. You all rule. Thank you so much for spending your Fridays with us, or your Wednesdays. We're going to be back on Wednesday doing a Saturnus record. I can't remember their first record. I can't remember the name of it. It's got the dead deer on it. But we appreciate you guys, and we will be back next week. For sure, there'll be a couple reviews from Alan coming this week. Again, sorry I dropped the ball this week. It's just the way it went.
Hey, when you're sick, stuff has got to wait. You got to take care of your health first. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Nobody out there considers my opinion of the new Sulfur Eon and the new Wayfarer albums a matter of life and death. They'll be just fine.
It's true.
Next week.
But we like giving our opinions to you folks that do enjoy watching the reviews. And Glenn is reminding you, Alan, 5K is coming.
It is. I don't think we're going to get there before the holidays, so I can at least make it through the rest of 2023 without that. But hey, prove me wrong. If for folks, since there are new folks, if you don't know what we're talking about, I promised long ago that when we get to 5,000 subs, I will live stream listening to Halloween's Chameleon album, which is one of the most wretched, disappointing albums ever. There's one that made a lousy first impression and has never made a good impression. And yes, I will suffer through that live for everybody's amusement and entertainment as soon as we get to 5,000 subs. If you want to see that happen during the holiday season, go ahead and subscribe down there, push that number on up to 5K, and then I'll be having a blue Christmas.
I anticipate February. The way things are going, maybe February or March we'll be listening to some Chameleon together.
We are.
We'll break down. Yep. We'll stop in between songs and have a discussion about what we just listened to.
Oh God, you're going to make me drag it out even longer.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. We're gonna see if we come out the other end. Yeah,
Something's
TJ,
going to come out the other
Alan.
end.
Yeah, Alan, I never do that on purpose. Anyway, everybody, y'all rule. Thank you so much for joining us, Heavy Metallurgy family. We appreciate you, of course, and we will see you next week.
Yep. Until then, everybody take care. Next week, we should have Darcy on for something fun, maybe something a little Halloween spooky themed. You'll have to wait and see.
We will figure it out. Cheers, everyone.